contributor appreciation. Solo today, but in no way less energetic for the process. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. This is contributor appreciation. This is when it kind of speaks for itself, right? Contributor appreciation. We used to call it patron appreciation, but we realized people contribute in ways other than patron. Some people don't even like patron. And so it became that much more, it became that much more important to kind of change the name to ensure that people understand that the appreciation goes beyond just one way of giving. If my wife was here, I'm running this solo today. She had other things that pull Mrs. Thomas away. But if my wife was here, she would go into an explanation of the reason for the show and what Patreon is and everything else. So I am going to do the same. I'm going to try to mimic Mrs. Thomas. I probably am not up to the task because she does it better. But ultimately, Patreon is a system that allows people to contribute. Many times the person who's doing the show, there's a blind spot in regards to contributions that may come in for the next month, meaning the person has a forecast in order to make the show work. And so Patreon is a way to allow people to contribute. It's just a platform. But people give through all sorts of ways: Patreon, PayPal, Super Chat, etc. Yeah. So our point, and my wife helps me with the show, is to thank you. It is appreciated. We often say that YouTube is an untrustworthy actor. And we say that because many of the shows just get demonetized. And sometimes those things are random. My wife ran into that when they demonetized the show she did on Sudan. She was like, what? She was broken. She was like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. Yeah, they do that. And it's not just me complaining. I bet you will find many of your YouTubers, especially in independent media, complaining about this very thing. In fact, many people who aren't in independent media. One of my favorite shows is Indie Idel. Indie Idel does a World War II channel. In fact, World War I, it's called The Great War. And it's every day or every week within the war, the First World War, week by week by week by week. And he would do this going on, and it was an amazing series. Essentially, this is what's taking place today in the war. It was a fascinating series. And so now he's moved on to the World War II. And he was doing the in-between years. And I think he's still doing the in-between years right now, meaning what was taking place between the First World War and the Second World War, the 20 years. It is a fascinating, fascinating series. And I recommend that series to anybody that is interested in learning more about the first, second, and in-between years of those wars. It's fascinating. Especially it's like, today, this is what took place. Or in this week, these are the things that are taking place. And it's awesome. Because right now, the series the part that they're in is Germany is just kicking ass. And this war machine seems to be unstoppable. And it's like, they are invading Finland. They're invading this place. They're invading that place. And the Brits are on the run. France is on the run. They're being real. Like, it's that type of, it's so good. It's so good. It's so good. It's just so fucking good. But my point is, that series get demonetized also. Like, Idel got to the point where he was so frustrated by it, where he does a series where he just starts dancing the jig. Like, he comes out with his cat, and he just starts dancing, and his point is, all right, fair enough, you're going to demonetize all the other videos, maybe you can monetize this one, because this seems to be the only thing that you guys are interested in. They're demonetizing history lessons. Big Baby Zoobs. What's happening, Big Baby Zoobs? Thanks, man, I appreciate it. War stuff, that's my Jamal. I am fascinated by war stuff, I'm sorry. I am a lefty's lefty, but Lord knows, man. Lord knows. I am fascinated by that type of stuff. So I get a kick out of it, and I tend to study it relentlessly, at least for the past few years. Keep in mind, I've played chess going back since I was a child, going back to I was like 12 years old. And that orients your thinking away. I mean, the entire game is predicated on taking the king. And you spend years doing that. You spend hours upon hours upon hours in tournaments and studying all of these different plans of attack, plans of defense, all this other stuff. And it's just war on a smaller footing. That's literally all it is. It's war on 64 squares. That's all it is. I would imagine there could be some people who, have invested that much into it for that long, that can come out of it that is detached from the things that take place around the world from the standpoint of conflict and conquest and all this other stuff. I was not one of those people that was able to escape that. I am enamored by that. Big Baby Zoobs, I agree, chess is surprising. It is. What they say, chess, like women have, what is that? Like chess, like women and money have the things that make men happy. It's a sexist quote, but it's funny as all hell. Did you get into the U.S. Civil War? I haven't got there yet. That was bananas as well. Michael Williams, only somewhat. Only somewhat. Like it's funny. I found myself working backwards or jumping around based on stuff that comes up, because like one war oftentimes spurs on the next, or like within one war, like there's the roots of another, that type of stuff. So reading one thing, it points to something else. So for example, Spanish Civil War, like I ended up jumping into that based on one of the other books. Like Franco is like, okay, what's going on in Spain? And even though kind of like around the perimeter stuff, not the full on end. So yeah, the female monarch is supreme in chess. Jack Daly, the female monarch is supreme in chess, but she is taking orders from a king. That's the catch. That's the catch. Boiled rope lamp post. Bush family sold arms in Civil War. I'm not surprised. I mean, you'd be surprised at the number of companies. One of my favorite channels, Teak History. Teak historical reference, amazing. When he gets into politics, he has no idea what he's talking about. He makes this argument that Nazis were socialists. So this gets weird. The first key point to that term is national. These guys were nationalists. They were fascists. That's right-wing ideology. Now, if you want to say that there are social systems that trend, meaning from a socialist standpoint, towards a right-wing ideology, fair enough, but let's start there. National is the first word. They were viciously nationalistic. I mean, even going through this nation of Germanizing various areas. Germanizing means the nation, nationalization. It was a national movement. They were fascists. Beyond the point of being fascist, the economy was strange. The economy was a little weird. They didn't take on war, total war. Meaning, Germany didn't immediately take on this notion of total war, like right off the bat. Speer had to push him, and some other people had to push him to say, look, you're not going to win this the way you think you're going to win this. And these people may be Ubermenschen, but your production and everything else is not keeping up. We need to go on a total war footing. And the catch with this is Hitler understood, just based on his experience in the First World War, that if the people get pissed off in the home front, they are going to kill your war effort. And so he was resistant to some of that stuff. But it didn't really matter. You're in a war with three major nations. And those nations are on a total war footing. There's an awesome scene in Speer's book. Albert Speer. Everything in the book is not true, by the way. People tend to lie. Even when they're doing their memoirs, they lie. It is what it is. Don't read a memoir thinking that everything in the memoir is true, especially when they're trying to save face. Speer in the book. Fuck, I know we're in a history lesson. I'm sorry. The Nazis were National Socialists, yes. But that's like saying the Democratic Republic of North Korea. Just because they call themselves democratic doesn't necessarily mean that they are. No, people call themselves whatever they want. Also, this notion of socialism goes with this notion of it's not race-based. Like, you can't have it. Like, socialism was based on class, not race. And somebody kind of made this point to Teak. He was like, what's the difference between class and race? There's a big fucking difference between class and race. And the idea that you're even making that point is nonsense. America calls itself a democracy. Names can be misleading. Yes, it's a republic. Names can be misleading. Just because you call it something doesn't mean that's what it is. People lie. People lie. It's what they do. Even when they're trying to cast themselves as something in a political sense. Their economy was weird. Like Hitler had this aspect that international Jewry was lurking out there. And so his notion of like international trade and everything else kind of came to a halt. meaning Germany was in a fix. I mean, he fucked the economy up. But he was able to kind of rebuild the economy based on war stuff, if that makes sense. Dumping a bunch of money and resources and everything into the war, but he was going beyond his means. Getting the food from the Ukraine and from the Soviet Union, all this stuff, was vitally necessary. What did he do with that food? He shipped that shit back to Germany and starved those various areas because he needed living space for the Germans. That war is fascinating, man. And when you get into the economics of Germany, it's utterly bizarre what he was trying to do. It was bizarre what he was trying to do. Oh, but my point in saying that was, it wasn't a socialist economy. Like, even though they started taking on heavier controls over the economy, fact of the matter is, if the United States was at war, they would do the same thing. Yes, they would pay the capitalists, and Hitler was paying the capitalists, and the capitalists were doing extraordinarily well. Do you think Germany was producing there were still markets in Germany, and do you think Germany was producing their own, set line B and all that stuff? No, they were buying that stuff. They were buying and contracting out for companies to build those concentration camps. They were contracting out for companies to build their airplanes and everything else. They were requisitioning those things, and they were getting paid handsomely for it. Now, don't get me wrong. They started using slave labor at a certain point, and they started working people to death. And even among Germans themselves, there was a heavy play in it. You can't call it a straight capitalist economy. I guess that's my point. But by the same token, socialism has more to do with class, not race. It's a really bizarre thing. I don't necessarily accept entirely that this was a socialist economy because, this is not based on class. It's a fascinating... Those books are fascinating. That's all I'm saying. And they demonetize those channels. It's fucked up. But that's a debate that could be had. Communism with a dash of spice on it, right? Communism with a dash of spice. Put it this way. If everybody in Germany was German, meaning if there was nobody else, and everybody was German, and Hitler won his war, then yes, call it socialism. Call it socialism at that point. He'd get what he wanted. But understand, that only works if you kill and murder everybody else that doesn't fit Hitler's specific thing of being the type of perfect race. And once you have that perfect race, then everybody can be socialist. I mean, if you're going to say that, let's be clear on what that is. Also, Tulsi. So, the Democratic Party, and I've alluded to this once before, but I saw a video Kyle did, and he's late. I got there first, so good on that. Getting there first. I'm looking for a video, Kyle. I'm sorry, I'm running behind because I'm doing this all on my own today. But Tulsi is being excluded from the DNC debates. Now, when you ask why Tulsi is being excluded from the Democratic debates, the question has to do with the criteria that the Democratic Party is using. If you remember, the first time around, the Democratic Party was going with this notion. They had like 3 debates. They had like little to no debates. And in having those little to no debates, give me 1 second. And having those little to no debates, they, Jesus Christ. And having those little to no debates, for the most part, they were doing that to game the system. They know the more debates, the more the public would get an opportunity to see Sanders eat Hillary Clinton alive like he did in each and every one of those debates. And the last thing they wanted to do is Hillary Clinton to get embarrassed again and again and again and again. And it's only so much propaganda that you can put out when people can see the debate for themselves, especially when they can look it up. So, they cut down and they limited the number of debates that were being had. So this time around, Tom Perez goes out, and in what was flagrant cheating the last time around, he goes with this notion that the only cheating that took place were the debates. That was the only cheating that took place. Forget the stuff that was coming up behind the scenes about the DNC gaming the system. Tom Perez comes out and says, no, people had a crisis of confidence in our system. Why? Because you were cheating. Everybody could read the WikiLeaks, Tom. Everybody could read it. Everybody could see behind the scenes what was going on. We're supposed to be impartial. But the fix was in. And That's assuming that's only the degree you want to go to. If you want to get into the election stuff itself, meaning the way how the polls and the exit polls will be dramatically different from what took place in the actual vote tally. It looked strange. It looked like you guys were gaming the system. Even shutting down polling locations, you were gaming the system. It went beyond just this nonsense of debates. So the way that the DNC is resolved to deal with this is, all right, since people have an issue with the way we're carrying out our debates, we're going to have 1,000 debates, and there's going to be a criteria for people to get on those debates, to get on the debate stage. The criteria, starting off, you had to be 1% of the polls, and you also had to have 60,000 unique donors. Tulsi hit her unique donors. For the second time around, you needed to have 3% of the polls, or 2%, 2 or 3%, I forget which one off the top of my head. And you need to have 130,000 unique donors. Essentially, it doubled. So from 1% to 2%, and from 60,000 to 120, but I think it was 130,000. Tulsi has met the criteria of 130,000 in regards to donations. She's also met the criteria of 2% in the polls, depending upon which polls you are viewing. That's the catch. That's the catch. The DNC is only using very specific polls and making a determination on who gets on that debate stage. What you're watching here is Tulsi Gabbard eat Kamala Harris alive. Kamala Harris being utterly and entirely defenseless to explain and defend her record. And Tulsi Gabbard looking extraordinarily strong here as she does it. She hit the donor threshold, meaning the number of unique donors. Clearly there's grassroots support. And she hits 2% in multiple polls, not just 1 or 2, multiple polls. The catch is they have to be DNC approved polls. And that's the rub. That's the rub. The DNC is using very specific polls to make the determination on who shows up. They're not even using an average. They're literally plucking and picking the polls. Now, I'm not going to go so far as to say this is a scam or this is cheating or this is rigging. I'm not going to go there. That's somewhat hyperbolic. What I will say is, if you know that polls trend a particular way, then to some degree you can have some influence on the process just by choosing the specific polls. Emerson is not a bad poll by any stretch. And by the way, The Economist, again, these are not horrible polls. These polls are actually quite good. These polls are not included into the process. I guess my point is this. People are asking, there needs to be variety on that debate stage. And right now, the way you are using the system or setting the polling, meaning controlling the very few polls that you're using, you're excluding various members from that debate stage who clearly has grassroots support and who clearly has hit your unique donor threshold. John Delaney got like 4 people to vote for him, including himself. His ass got on that debate stage the first time around. Tulsi Gabbard is 130,000 is more than at this point unique donations. She clearly has grassroots support. You need to be on the debate stage for people to know who you are. That's the catch. It's a chicken and an egg. It's like, how would people know you if you're not in a public limelight for people to know you? And the debate stage is the area where you get the opportunity to do that. There are 20 people in this debate. And I understand that you need to thin the herd. So I'm not even against that per se. But I don't like this, the modicum of polls. I suppose their argument would be, look, regardless of what polls we choose, people would have had issues with it. Fair enough. I take that point. People are trying to get Tulsi on the debate stage. That's their objective. They're trying to get Tulsi on the debate stage. She hits the unique donation. She clearly has grassroots support. She clearly has it. A Change.org petition has been released. Include economist Emerson Suffolk polls for the DNC debates. We, the voters, ask that you include polls from the economist Emerson and Suffolk for the September and October DNC debates. Since the end of July debates, only a handful of polls have been released, far fewer than what was previously being released. We asked that these polls be included so Secretary Castro and Gabbard be included in the debates. They have far exceeded the donor threshold and clearly have grassroots support, which is essential for any election. The thing is, it doesn't matter if far few polls have been released. The Democratic Party is only using very specific polls, and I think that's your point. If you're only using very few polls, you're going to exclude people from that third debate when another poll might have came out that showed those people had gained a certain degree of support from their performance in the previous debate. You need to include additional polls so you can get a clear viewing on her support. And just so we're clear, this is real clear politics. If you notice, that Fox News poll that came out gave Warren a 10-point lead. That poll is such an outlier. That poll is a massive outlier. But because of that, it put Warren into the second spot. Fair enough. Fair enough. It's what it is. Polls are polls. Now, that said, Gabbard, if you average it out, gets 1. But look at this. If you look at The Economist, it's 2. If you look at The Economist YouGov, that's 3. I don't see Emerson on here. Let's see. Where's Emerson? The last time I saw Emerson, she was up on Emerson. I guess the point is, their goal is to get her on the debate stage. And their point is, you're choosing the polls that you want to use. And there are polls that show she has that support. And I got to be honest, 1%, 2%, is that really that big of a difference? I suppose if you're trying to, the unique donors, I don't know. I'm signing this petition personally because, again, I want Gabbard on that debate stage. And when I heard that they were using very specific polls, my thought was, well, that doesn't seem fair. I mean, you're essentially choosing the specific polls that you guys are using. Who made that choice on those polls? Was that just a basic DNC choice? And if it was a DNC choice, why did you choose some polls over others, including some that were rather scientific? To be fair, though, it's impossible, I would imagine, to know what those polls are going to show months out. So that's why I'm not going with this notion of rigging, cheating, and everything else. More so that polls have certain biases towards certain candidates. That's all. I want her on the debate stage, though. So I'm signing this petition. The DNC is going to entirely ignore this petition when I'm signing it. In fact, do that shit now. What? The session was expired. Try signing again. Bam. Done. All right. So that's the first point. And because, look, I did this video once before, so I'm not going to go entirely into the video again. I was explaining how they were going by this. I mean, I went into further detail in the polls that the DNC were using and what they were using to try to make that exclusionary principle for the standpoint of Tulsi. So I'm not going to entirely do that video again because I did that video once. But at the same token, it is a good point that, hey, you guys are using certain polls, but not other polls. Why one versus another, especially when these other ones are beneficial to certain candidates who, let's be honest, you probably should want on a debate stage if you want any level of variety in those debates. And maybe the goal of those debates is not variety. But we'll see. I want on the debate stage. The more lefties on that stage, the better. And just at a very basic point, I want her pushing Sanders to the left. I am okay with that. I'm okay with that 1,000 times. I am okay with that. So let's keep going. There's that. There's Tulsi. I want to talk about Hong Kong. I've been following what has been taking place in Hong Kong, almost like a rainbow revolution or something, like the thing that was in Ukraine. It's always interesting to me that the media pays a lot of attention to what is going on in places like the Ukraine and Hong Kong, but we never see what takes place in Paris. And they have been protesting in Paris for the last, 8 months or so? This is Hong Kong. Don't quote that number, by the way. They said 1.7 million, but I don't know if that estimate is true. That is a lot of people. That is a lot of people. And this is after China has threatened to send military to put this down. I got to be honest, I don't think your military can put this down. At least not without a lot of bloodshed. That is astonishing. We're talking about a little island. Now, they call themselves pro-democracy demonstrators. A few things we need to know. Hong Kong was taken, and I've said this on more than one occasion because I've done these videos multiple times, was taken by the Brits in retaliation for China rebelling against them selling opium to China. It's astonishing. Like, when you look at this, China looks at this with great embarrassment. Why? Because this is a memory. This is a reminder, an experiential, living reminder of a time where they couldn't defend themselves and they couldn't maintain their own homeland. Thanks, Brits. This country went under British rule, British control. China couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't defend themselves at the time. They weren't strong enough. They're strong enough now. By the same token, from the standpoint of the United States, who's in a trade war with China, Hong Kong is just another venue for that trade war. I was fascinated by mainstream media who kind of went with this notion that Trump is disengaged from this process. Trump is disengaged from this process, while simultaneously showing images like this. Look at this. This is Hong Kong. They're holding the American flag. This is a journalist trying to get a good shot of that American flag, so, there's that. But it goes beyond that. I've shown multiple images with these guys holding the flag, singing the Star-Spangled Banner. And they were showing that at the exact same time that they said Donald Trump is completely disengaged from this process. As if the people holding the American flag are doing it willy-nilly and for no reason. If you are mainstream media, at the very least, you should ask two basic questions. Why are they holding the American flag? And is it possible there's clandestine operations in that country? Clandestine operations in that country where that holding of the American flag is trying to send a message. They don't ask those questions. They don't ask those questions. I want to show you something else. I've shown this before, so forgive me if you're an avid viewer and you've seen this image before. But right here. Hong Kong. And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting through the parallel. That's extraordinarily inspiring, seeing this coming from a colony in Hong Kong. Hong Kong that technically belongs to China. That's extraordinary. That's extraordinary. That's extraordinary. Mainstream media showed that image. And then literally said, Trump's leadership is missing in the world. Now, take out right or wrong. Take out what you want, what you don't want. Take out your ideology, put all this stuff to the side. Just action and consequence and history. Technically, Hong Kong is China's. Technically, Hong Kong was taken from China in retaliation for the Brits not being able to sell their drugs to China that did not want those drugs. Hong Kong is pushing now for a certain democracy movement. I've argued on more than one occasion that when people get together and they start feeling themselves, the requests and the things that they want escalate. It started off as, we don't want to be extradited over to China. It turned into, and I'm telling you it's going to turn into, liberation and statehood. Not statehood, I'm sorry. Well, statehood in the sense of being an independent nation. Whether or not Hong Kong can support itself is secondary to the want. Those things are secondary. Those protests, that 1.7 million people estimate, eventually will turn into, we want to be our own thing. We do not want to be technically under the thumb of China. In 50 years, 40 some years now, Yeah, 40 something years now. There's technically that two system thing is supposed to break down. Right now, two systems, one country. They are flipping out. They're flipping out. The two system thing has not broken down yet. And you have people in China who are hardliners who are like, those people need to get their shit together because at some point you're going to belong to us. It makes no sense, this protest, if it does not escalate to, we want statehood. Otherwise, in 40 years, you are going to be given over to China. And you're flipping out about a bill that would allow extradition. I hope you get my point. The protest doesn't really make sense if the protest doesn't go towards this thing of independence. That's my point. It will escalate to that, even though it might not be there yet. I want to show you something else. This is an image you would never see on mainstream media. China outed this woman. This woman is a U.S. diplomat. That woman, U.S. diplomat, is meeting with members of the protests, of the pro-democracy group, the leaders of it. After meeting with this woman, the protests got more violent. Got a lot more violent. And not just more violent. Look at this. This is a police station. The thing that represents law and order set on fire. And again, is it possible, to any degree that's possible, that Trump is not disengaged, that CIA operations have been given to NGOs, which is true, by the way. That's true. You dump money into a particular state, country, into opposition groups that are going against people who you dislike. And in dumping money into those opposition groups, you can affect your will without necessarily having a presence in a sense of direct action. In this case, is it possible, to any degree that's possible, that they are not singing the Pledge of Allegiance for shits and giggles? That this is indeed a statement that goes just beyond these guys wanting American intervention into this area? Is it possible that the intervention is already taking place in a clandestine way? Seeing as these guys were meeting the representative from America, I think that may be true. So why does the mainstream media tell the public that? Why don't they say that? The goal of this is 1, humiliation, 2, sever Hong Kong from China. That's America's objective. America's objective is accomplished in 2 ways, however. If China puts a military presence in Hong Kong, so what? We don't care. If America doesn't do that, in Hong Kong, these protests get more aggressive and these protests escalate to this notion of independence. Again, it's a win-win for us. The goal is just humiliation of China. That works either way, with varying degrees of greater success, like gravy on top, depending on what takes place. China knows this and has come out saying, essentially calls it the black hand. That's what they called it. And their point is, stay out of our affairs. Stay out of our affairs. They were very explicit about this. Stop interacting in our affairs. They're not unclear on this. And by the way, I keep making this point. In Afghanistan, when the Soviet troops went into Afghanistan, the world looks at this and says, oh my God, I can't believe they're doing this. And the reality of it is, there were clandestine operations going on in Afghanistan that the Soviets knew about. They weren't unclear that there were clandestine operations. Their response to that was heavy-handed, and the heavy-handed response worked against their interests. From America's standpoint, America looked at that and said that was a success. We bragged about that, by the way. It's like, yes! We got them to invest their forces into a Vietnam-like situation. Yes! Public policy, foreign policy. Now, those same troops that we radicalized, of course, ended up being Al-Qaeda and members of Al-Qaeda that eventually hit us on 9/11 and some of these other various ways. So, yes, a policy success for 10 years, and then after that, blowback. History doesn't stop, right? Well, I'm making the point that the same thing is somewhat true here. The goal of this is policy embarrassment and to get an investment of Chinese might into this country potentially, or at the very least sever Hong Kong from China. Both of those are just punitive measures for China trying to take the crown, for them trying to take the crown. We'll see. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think I'm Right, I think I'm dead on. Now, there's something else I wanted to show this. Oh, the reason I say take right, wrong, all that stuff out of it is because, in an ideological sense, you have hawks, the Clintonites of the world, who love this. They salivate over this. They're like, yes, rip it away, rip it away. And in their mind, they like this notion of the U.S. somehow, for some reason, doing something, being involved, and something that literally has nothing at all to do with the United States. I mean, maybe Britain can make an argument for involvement. What the hell does the United States have to do with what takes place in China? Nothing. Nothing. That said, all countries, over the entire course of history, have involved themselves in other countries' affairs. And all groups, within the context of countries, seek out additional assistance outside of themselves for that help. The American Revolution, for example, France didn't like Brits. So what did France do? France aided the Americans. We want to help you out. Same thing with Russia, the Russian Revolution. Germany throws Lenin back into Russia like a bomb in order to destabilize the Russian government. Was Lenin serious about his own political objectives? Yes. Was Lenin bothered by working in coordination with Germany to accomplish those objectives? No. He was not bothered in the least. As long as those objectives coincided, the world is good. And that's the way they looked at it. That's the way countries function. That's the way the countries act. When the United States looks to Iran for the MEK, this terrorist religious, cult of sorts, they're doing that because they're trying to get something within the country itself that they can dump a bunch of money into, where they wouldn't necessarily need to add inside effect. Meaning, that's their inside guy. That's their guy on the inside that works. Same thing with Venezuela. Guaido is their inside man. They can dump a bunch of money and everything else into Guaido. In this case, they were more heavy-handed in that particular approach. But in other approaches, they don't have to be overly heavy-handed. You work behind the scenes. As China calls it, the black hand. My point is twofold. I am stuck in this weird situation, right? When people become something distinct, and those people say we want to be distinct and we want our own thing, who am I to be against it? If it was me, who am I to be against it? So I guess my point is, the moment that this group becomes something else, and these guys say, look, there's a preponderance of people saying we want to be something else. We don't want to be handed over to China like a bag of meat. We want to be something else. Then I'm stuck in the situation of saying those people probably should be able to be allowed to be something else. By the same token, the people who are beside me saying that are a bunch of neocons. And they're like, yes, let's stick it to China by taking Hong Kong away. The problem here is the temperament, or my temperament, is dramatically different than theirs. Mine is not to stick it to China. Mine has everything to do with Hong Kong being able to, accentuate that notion of individuality. Theirs is more mean-spirited. And that's my issue with this particular topic. Like, it's not, I don't want to be on the side of pro-democracy in this. I don't want to be. Because the people who are on that side with me are fucking neocons. Like, if you look at the people who are saying, or who are pushing this, you have like Republicans, you have Democrats, you have all of these people like across the board, like, yes, but their yeses stick it to China. My goal is not to stick it to China. My goal is, if Hong Kong wants a certain degree of liberation, fair enough. By the same token, let's be very clear. The U.S. media decides what it wants to show and what it wants to emphasize versus not. You are seeing this because they want you to see this. Right now, the federal government is in opposition to China. We are in the middle of a trade war. Media tends to go in line with the federal government, especially on issues of foreign policy, meaning you will see this to the hilt on MSNBC, on CNN, on Fox News. What you want to see on those channels is a yellow vest movement. Even though that has been going on longer, and it has at times been more intense. That's what you won't see. They're choosing. Why? Because they want to stick it to China. And Hong Kong is just a way of doing so. I hope you understand what I mean by this. And the reason why I said take right, wrong, good, bad, ideology, all that stuff out. The basic historical context is, we're thanks Brits. Thanks Britain. Like I swear, man. Do you realize there are like 5 stories? And there's another story in Kashmir that I want to do or want to talk about. And many of these things have to do with Britain. World War One. World War One. This is going to evolve. That's going to evolve. It's going to evolve. Mike Burns. We cannot be the government when or... let's say it again. They don't show the yellow vest. Yeah, they don't show the yellow vest. It didn't go away my baby. They choose. Bernie or guillotine. Nothing that Bernie Sanders is talking about is socialism. Yes. If you would like to know the difference, there are plenty of actual socialists like myself in this channel that can explain the difference. I'm sorry, Bernie Sanders is not a socialist. I don't give a shit what he calls himself. And people hit him on this. Like, this will never be a socialist country. Sanders is a capitalist. The only difference here is he's far to the left and he needs to delineate himself from what takes place in the United States. The Democrats in the United States are effectively the Tories or the right-wing government in the UK. Sanders is just a FDR Democrat. That's all he is. Sanders is not talking about nationalizing the railways. He's not talking about nationalizing our energy system. He's not talking about any of that stuff. I haven't even heard him talk about worker co-ops, which is one of the things that the new Marxists or the new socialists are talking about. So he's not a socialist. And they can hit him with it all he wants. Saying that you want to ensure that people get health care for Medicare for all is not socialism. I'm sorry. It's not socialism. It's better. Lord knows it's better. But it's not socialism. And any socialist worth their salt will tell you so. Any socialist worth their salt will tell you so. In fact, socialists bristle when you kind of make that point that Bernie Sanders is a socialist. Boiled roped lamppost. Bernie Sanders is controlled opposition. That is nonsense. That is nonsense. I would agree with you back in 2016, yes. When he goes out and says vote for Hillary Clinton, yes, that's true. I would even agree with you that TYT is controlled opposition. That's true. I think that's true. The reason why I say that is because regardless of what happens, ultimately they're just going to say vote Democrat. Even if they're saying, oh, Democratic Party sucks, Democratic Party sucks, Democratic Party sucks. All right, go vote Democrat because Republicans are horrible. By definition, to some degree, that's controlled opposition. Just saying. Boiled rope lampposts. Well, you didn't say he was a sellout. You said he was controlled opposition. Those are different things. Different definitions. At least to me. Look, if in 2016 Sanders loses, he's cheated, but he loses. And he goes out and he tells people, all right, guys, I need you to vote for Hillary Clinton now that I lost. Controlled opposition, you can say so, maybe. I mean, at that point, he's not opposition anymore, so I guess the definition doesn't apply. But they don't have meetings where they're talking about stopping Sanders if he's controlled opposition. It just doesn't make sense. I know you feel a particular way, your feelings are hurt, but that's not indicative of reality. Just saying. It's not indicative of reality. And yeah, Bernie Sanders in this case is the compromise. Just saying. That doesn't really make sense. I mean, you have meetings, you literally have meetings where these guys are having anti-Sanders meetings. I don't think that happens. I don't think people put it this way. I don't think people spend money to spend money. It's too hard to make it. And if they're dumping millions upon millions upon millions of attacking Medicare for all this other stuff, and if many of these members move their position from even past a public option to a Medicare for some, Medicare for most, Medicare for whatever, they're not doing that for shits and giggles. They're doing that because Sanders has dragged the party to the left. That's not controlled opposition. I'm sorry, that's something else. That's having a outsized effect on not just the party, but on public discourse. You may feel a particular way about Sanders, but however you feel needs to be correlated to actual reality. And right now, your feelings are not. Just saying. And speaking on Sanders, while we're talking about Sanders, Sanders has released a new criminal justice bill. So yeah, while we're there, let's talk about Sanders. And in fact, I want to talk about this in two ways. Sanders, this is him. I think this was today.
Dollars a year of taxpayers' money at the local, state, and federal level to lock up fellow Americans. $80 billion a year. And we end up with more people in jail than any other country on earth. So let me start off this discussion and lay it out to the panel, and I want all of you to be thinking about it. Might it not be a better idea to start taking some of that $80 billion spent to lock people up and maybe, just maybe, start investing in our young people? We spend, I don't want everybody.
We lock up more people than anywhere else on earth. Home of the free, home of the brave. 5% of the world's population. We lock up 25%. We have 25% of the world's population in our jails, meaning 25% of the world's jail population is in our jails. We only have 5% of the population. We have more people than, if I am not mistaken, and don't quote me on this, even though I think this is right, China has 3 times our population and less people in their jails than we do. Home of the free, land of the free, home of the brave. Sanders has come out with a new criminal justice plan that is going to be a massive overhaul to the criminal justice system. So there are a few points. It's right here. The ambitious 6,000-word proposal seeks to remake the nation's prisons, police departments, courts, drug laws, treatment of people who have mental illnesses with a full-throated progressive agenda. Sanders' left-wing allies have argued he has evolved in recent years on the issue of criminal justice. Maybe, I can look back at the speech that him and Joe Biden was giving at the exact same time when the crime bill was coming out. I would say look at Sanders' speech, look at Biden's speech. Sanders' speech is still here, going back in like 2000. He might have been here on all of these points, but he was here on a lot of these points. The plan calls for banning cash bail, solitary confinement, and civil asset forfeiture, hallelujah, and also allows law enforcement officials to seize people's... Oh, right. The plan calls for banning cash bail, solitary confinement, and civil asset forfeiture. Now, you must understand what this is. A cop can pull you over, literally, this is legal, and he could look and see that you have, let's say, $1,000, and he could take that from you. You haven't broken any laws. You haven't done anything wrong. He doesn't need anything else. He can walk away with your property. You may or may not get it back. The laws allow for him to do that. That goes for cars, that goes for homes, that goes for all sorts of stuff. Their argument is, well, this could be involved in a drug deal. Or it could not be involved in a drug deal. You don't know because that person hasn't committed any crimes. But they allow that. In America, they allow that. Cops can steal your property. Legally, steal your property. Yeah, right here. Official people, homes, or property, even if they haven't convicted a crime. The plan also looks to legalize marijuana and abolish the death penalty, a practice Sanders has long opposed. The Vermont senator would legalize safe injection sites where people can use illegal drugs under medical supervision, a controversial practice that has shown in several studies to curb the number of overdose deaths. Again, non-ideological in a sense. What works? What works? And yeah, I know anywhere you go is where you're at from the standpoint of ideology. But there is also something to be said for an ideology that says what works. And, I understand that you don't like people using drugs in the sense of injections. I don't either. By the same token, I don't want to put people in prison for that. Yeah, I hope you understand what I mean. Like, there are situations where there are no good outcomes. There are only less bad outcomes. And in a situation where a person is a drug user, no, I don't want that person to use drugs. But putting him in prison is worse. I hope you understand my point. Having the cops and paying the cops to go and lock up someone for using drugs, something that is individual to that particular individual, I don't want that to happen. I don't want that person using injections either, however. But between the two, the least worse for me is the safe injection site. Keep in mind, I am the person that believes all drugs should be legal. while you bushing. Look, the moment that you make a law, especially a drug law, we are spending federal money or state money that can be used for other things, to go and grab a person and put that person into a prison and leave that person in a cage. When that person gets out, any notion of that person getting a job gets shot. And not to mention that person is being ripped away from the things that they know, and most likely are just going to go back to what they were doing before. I am more in this camp that this is a medical issue, not a criminal issue, and it should be dealt with as such. I am that way as an absolute. I understand people are like, oh man, but I don't like druggies outside of my home. Fair enough. And we can have this conversation about laws to, quart off certain areas or have these kind of safe injection sites and all those other things. But at the very least start at this point that criminalizing it makes it worse. Criminalizing it makes it worse. That's where I'm at. Lefties disagree with me on that, but I say further to the left than most. Sanders' proposal promises the Attorney General will investigate every time a person is killed in police custody. He would also establish a prisoner bill of rights, create a civilian corps of unarmed first responders to deal with mental health emergencies, and boost public funding for public defenders. Yes! 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 That is a big one. That is a big one. Because you realize public defenders are strained of cash. And because they're strained of cash, they're in this weird situation of, I'm supposed to defend these people and I don't have the resources to do it. And, there's a show that used to come on, I forget which one episode, it was like Stars or something like that, where they were following the lives of public defenders. And they had to trick the state into doing certain tests because they themselves didn't have the money to do it. And so it's a dog and pony show. It's like, you have the right to a lawyer. Yeah, a lawyer that is so at its wit's end and is so underfunded that it becomes just a show trial. It just becomes a show trial. We're back at that. Last week, or a week or two ago, a man with mental illness calls the cops. He calls them and says he's having an episode. Cops get there, and within an hour or so, the guy's dead. You find the image of the guy is dying face down in the grass, and says so. And the cop is laughing while this guy dies. Cops should not be sent to mental health emergencies unless it's required for them to be sent to mental health emergencies. But they should not be first responders. A cop's job is to lock up, to kill, and to restore order. That is not the same thing that you need in a situation of a mental health emergency. They are anger maniacs right off the bat. And they have this weird quirk about authority, even though they're just people. You can deal with situations where you can try to de-escalate, but they don't do that. Their job is not de-escalation. Their job is to restore order. And in a situation where a person is having a mental breakdown, that is not the maniac that you want to send to that situation. A first responder who is used to dealing with mental health crisis would be a better fit. I agree with this 1,000%. I totally agree with this. It's funny. Joe Biden has a horrible record on criminal justice, and he's released his crime bill. And it's like, you spent 40 years locking up people, and now you're going to repudiate everything that you did just because you want to be president. He should not be given a pass for that. He should not in any way be given a pass for that. Donald Smead, what do you want to bet a bunch of elderly are about to beat up these protesters? Totally not mainland undercover provocateurs in Hong Kong. That's interesting. That's interesting. And that's not... What do you... I'll go back to it. I'll explain what you're talking about. Data stream. Hong Kong is a conduit for capital in and out of China. China would be stupid to let the U.S. get its hands on it. They are not. Hong Kong is... China is not letting Hong Kong go. China is not letting Hong Kong go at all. Like, any notion that Hong Kong is going to be taken is nonsense. By the same token, that doesn't mean that the protesters there. It's like if Texas decided it wanted to leave, and China started to work with protesters in Texas, and those protesters started to get more violent and take down airports. What would the response of the United States be? Do you think this shit would happen? Do you think that the U.S. would allow the torching of a police station in a major city? They would never allow that. That would never take place. And if it did take place, the consequences would be extreme. I guarantee you that. And the public will be okay with the consequences to some degree being extreme. I guess my point is, China is deploying capability to stop this. Some of that involves threats, meaning we will send our military to quell this rest. And some of it is economic, trying to get people to lose their jobs if they find out there protesting, especially if they're getting violent in those protests. But I got to be honest, 1.7 million people is a lot of people. And whatever China is going to do, they better get to it. I had a conversation with a woman from China one day, and I was enamored at how naive she was about U.S. foreign policy. And I don't mean naive in a bad way. I mean, I know that's a bad word, but it's meant not in a negative way. It's more so in a literal sense. Like, because in her mind, she's like, wait, so you believe that the United States is looking at this stuff as a zero-sum game? And they think China is going to look at the world in the same way? Yes, exactly. That's exactly what's taking place. You look at the world in a particular way, you assume that the world is going to look at the way the same. The U.S. is looking to maintain a dominance. Full stop. China is trying to take that dominance, especially in economic matters. The U.S. sees a contest to its crown. This has not gotten into military affairs, at least not yet, but right now this is more so economic. But don't get it twisted. The U.S. is trying to injure, or at the very least humiliate, China. And the way they're trying to do this is by instigating and assisting with what is taking place in Hong Kong. It's not that the U.S. overly cares about Hong Kong per se, it's more so that they care about dinging China. Insofar as the quote-unquote pro-democracy protesters and the U.S. interests fall into alignment, yeah, the U.S. will assist these guys. But the goal of it is not pro-democracy. The U.S. doesn't really care so much about democracy. It has to do with dinging China. They want to make China look bad. And if they can get China to invest its military or something like that in Hong Kong with a world outcry. And the fact of the matter is, any military investment in Hong Kong is only going to create a reverb effect. Meaning it's not going to give the effect that they want. Sending military into Hong Kong is going to galvanize, at least based on historical precedents, the public to be against mainland China, not for it. Whatever China has to do here, it has to do it in clandestine ways to bring the temperature down. Military is not the answer. I'm just saying, it's true. The U.S. is trying to get its hands on Hong Kong. Not literally, but more so to carve it away from China. That's its objective. That's its goal. The protesters in Hong Kong, they individually, unbeknownst to anybody else, want independence. They will work with whatever group works with them to achieve those ends. If the person that they're meeting with from the U.S. is giving them logistics, money, advice, whatever, they're going to take it and they're going to say thank you. That sign, that flag, is an indication, is a message. It is not a no bullshit thing. They're not showing that U.S. flag for no reason. It's twofold. It could either be we want assistance or thank you for that assistance and here's the message being sent to China. For all we know, that woman who was talking to them, this could have been one of her requests. We want you to raise the flag. Send a message to China of what's taking place. I'm just saying. But you're right. They would be insane to allow it, and the U.S. would not allow it. The U.S. would never allow that. It would never allow that. Like, think Hawaii for the moment. Think of Hawaii. If China comes along and says, all right, we're going to assist Hawaii in a pro-independence movement, and you find representatives from China meeting with representatives who are head of that particular movement, what would they say? The United States has been screaming about a non-hack, screaming that a hack that didn't take place, for example, in Russia, was equivalent to Pearl Harbor. We are literally helping these people in this. And again, these protests have gotten violent. So yeah. I mean, it's fascinating to watch. And again, I'm in a moral quandary on this one. And the moral quandary is not from... No, it's not a moral quandary. I'm clear on what I want. My issue is not so much what I support. It's who's supporting it with me. That's my issue. My thing is, look, man, at a certain point where people gain a certain degree of independence, it's like going about to say, no, you must be under the thumb of a government that you don't want to be under the thumb of. And I guarantee you this, if the Chinese military goes in and do what they threaten to do, that independence movement will kick off the very next day. Whatever, on day 2, the independence movement will be in effect. I shit you not. China can threaten all it wants. Heavy-handed approaches oftentimes backfire. When Napoleon decided to take down the Spanish, let's do history. When Napoleon, at one point, Napoleon ran roughshod over Spain and Portugal, if I'm not mistaken. And he started using family members to, God, man. I'll get to the generalities because the specifics may be missing me. But he starts to run roughshod. He starts to put starts to overtly control Spain. And it goes to shit. Not just goes to shit. It gets into this kind of civil war where they're rebelling against him. And so he ends up having to come back in order to quell the unrest that takes place in Spain. But I want to my point is, that shit started to pop off when he started to exert overt control over the population. I'm saying adding in military in these situations like this can backfire. It reverberates. If China sends military here, day 2 will be independence. Mark my words, for the sake of this video or this clip. I could be wrong, but these things evolve. They evolve. Well, we'll see. But yeah, the China's not going to give up Hong Kong. At least not without major consequences. Donald Smead, how China handles this could sink or float the Belt Road Initiative. Yes, Donald Smead, you're right. Oh, and Belt Road Initiative. So just in case people don't know, China has engaged in this expansive program called the Belt Road Initiative. Now, it's essentially to Donald Smead. There's an idea, a notion, you might even want to call it philosophy, that says the person who controls Europe controls the world. Meaning, the person who controls this Eurasian landmass have always controlled essentially the world. Now, this is what it looks like. Do they have a bigger picture of this? I need a bigger picture, dog. I need a bigger picture. All right. And why are you not? I really hate their new look. It doesn't do anything for me. Motherfucker. I just want the picture. Just give me the picture, dog. Give me the picture. There we are. All right, so the thought is, whoever controls the front and the back end, or essentially this Eurasian landmass, controls the world. Right now, the United States, for the most part, are allies with all of these countries, mostly. And NATO members, of course, surround this particular area with a certain control of Europe. China, from the standpoint of economic development, is looking to connect all of this together. Coming all the way around Africa, back up to here. Belt and Road. And they've been dumping a ton of money into all of these various regions and cities and countries in order to make this work. Meaning they're creating a trade route and trade relationships with all of these countries. That's what Belt and Road is. The development that's taken place, the IMF, the organization that often puts these countries into wage slavery or into slavery and to get them to sell off assets and everything else. The IMF turns around and says, it's a scam. They're going to scam you. You would say that. You just don't like what they're doing. But that's what it is. It's a connecting of essentially all of Europe It's connecting of Europe. And again, those countries that they're dumping money into are saying, thank you for the cash, and we will allow the development. It's a massive, massive project. It puts you in the mind of the Marshall Plan. That's what it puts you in the mind of in regards to the scale. The Marshall Plan had more of a militaristic reason for it, though it wasn't just us giving money to countries in order to get them up to snuff. I mean, we wanted to have a bulwark against the Soviet Union. And it's easier to have a bulwark against the Soviet Union with a stronger Germany or a stronger Japan. Because look at Japan for the moment. Back during, I think this is Japan. Back here. I think this is Japan. Back during the Second War, the question, let's see. This gives names. So right here, Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, Indonesia, Kuala can't pronounce some of these names. Moscow, Germany, Greece, Djibouti, Kenya, Kolata. And I can tell you this from personal experience. There are a lot of Chinese in Kenya. There are a lot of Chinese in Africa in general. And I remember reading the newspaper where they say, most Kenyans speak English because it was a British colony at one point. And they made this point of, they said, America gave us over to China. I was fascinated by that. Essentially, by the Western powers, but particularly America gave us over to China. And the arguments that they were making was China has had so much investment in Africa that they've been able to, roughshod is the wrong word for it. They're getting a lot more influence in African affairs, let's say it that way. There were 3 casinos almost dedicated to Chinese in Kenya. And that's just in Kenya. That's just in the capital. That's just in Jesus Christ. Can't think of the name, but in Kenya. So yes, the Belt and Road thing is big, and the West is concerned, to say the least. I mean, the reason why you're getting this stuff like the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and all that stuff is stuff like that. And the reason why China is doing that is for stuff like the GPP. They know that the West is trying to crowd them out. They know it. These trade deals are in part trying to crowd them out. Obama's TPP was going to essentially exclude China and Russia from that trade deal. The Belt and Road Initiative is a way around that. And to be honest, you can even make an argument, a way of somewhat world domination in regards to economic affairs. China will be an economic juggernaut. The question is only when. They have every right to be. The U.S., you can make an argument, has every right to try to, I suppose, stop them. The question becomes how. I mean, it's one thing if you're doing that through competition, you just win in competition, but the U.S. has gone beyond competition. It's gone beyond competition. It's gone to browbeating neighbors to not use particular products, to castigate them as saying, oh, we don't like, to attack them outright in regards to trade policies. Oh, they're devaluing their currency. They're doing this, they're doing that. They're cheating. These horrible words that are used in regards to these guys. And yeah, it's going beyond trade because, again, we are involving ourselves in affairs that have nothing to do with us. And I put to you that all of this is to take a chunk out of China. I guarantee you. And Hong Kong is a focal point for it. So whether they let them do it or not, I don't know. J-Vel, going to be a lot of African Chinese babies coming. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. That Chinese man looking at us, oh, that booty. Them thick African women. That's like, yeah. That's what's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of Chinese African babies. Yes, they are. What's that cat on, this is my show. We can fuck around at this point. This is patron appreciation. What's the show, the guy on, The Originals. So on The Originals, one of the lead characters, Marcel. I used to didn't like Marcel when that show started, but he grew on me. He's Asian and black. There's going to be a lot of good-looking people coming out there, man. There's going to be a lot of good people coming out of China. Going to be a lot. Ironic, isn't it? Trump wants all the rubles, diamonds, minerals of Greenland, but global warming is a Chinese conspiracy. It is ironic. And very strange. Very strange that a person would ever say that. Look, we have If you're talking about like oil and gas, those are Western nations. China has its coal plants, don't misunderstand me, and some of these developing nations are doing what they can. But you can understand the argument of the developing nations. This seems grossly unfair. You guys were able to develop to meet whatever needs you needed for your society. And now you're wagging your finger at us when we're trying to do the same. That's the point. Now, the other argument is, well, dude, the rules have changed. Climate change is creating somewhat of a problem. If that is true, then you need to give something back to those nations. It's only fair, right? You were able to get your full productive powers, not to mention you ran roughshod over those particular nations. And here's another point. If you did give something back to those nations with this notion of development of those various regions, they wouldn't be coming to your country. They wouldn't be fleeing and coming to your shores. They can be where they are. Crystal Ball asks a question, and I want to answer Crystal Ball. I've answered this question once before. She didn't ask it directly to me, but she was, fair enough. I'll take it as if it was coming directly to me. She wanted to know Sanders supporters and Warren supporters tend to have different enclaves, meaning different bases of support. And she thinks that's weird. She's like, why? For people who support Sanders, why don't you support Warren? And for people who support Warren, why don't you support Sanders? Now, if I'm not mistaken, I was going to do this video anyway, but I think one of my patrons pointed to this. Yes. John Papadonakis. John Papadonakis, this is yours. Crystal Ball. Look at this. You want to know why we don't have issues with Warren? I don't know what they were asking them to clap about. I have no idea. I was looking for the speech. I thought that it might have been the one dealing with we won't be a socialist country. But I wasn't certain of that, and so I didn't necessarily want to go with that one. But I don't trust Warren. If you're asking me personally, I don't trust Warren. The issue is not policy. The issue is not policy. The issue has never been policy. Any Sanders supporter is worth their salt, any lefty, if you're talking to and you ask policy-wise, they would probably agree. They would probably agree, at least domestic. I mean, when she gets into this notion of Israel and all, okay, we're in the weeds. But if you're talking about just basic domestic policy of banks and of healthcare and that type of stuff, providing she's not going back and forth, I don't think anybody quibbles with what's on paper. Nobody quibbles with that. It's spine. It's the willingness to say pretty much anything to get from point A to point B. Who's for reparations? Who's a Native American? Right here. Who's for Standing Rock? Obama's for it. He says something about it. Obama says something about it. Okay, now I'm for it. Standing Rock, yes. I will put out my tweet. I am vigorously for Standing Rock now that Obama has said something about it. A woman called herself a Native American. They were shooting Native Americans. And of course, not supporting Sanders. I don't trust Warren. Burners don't typically trust Warren. It's not that they don't like her policies. It's not the policies. It's her. And if you're looking for any notion of consistency, it's not her. It's not her. Why on earth would I ever go into a competition? There are two people who parrot similar lines. One person I know is actually genuine. One person has been pushing this stuff for 20, 30, 40 years. And one person, you guys may disagree with this, but has showing a certain degree of spine and pushing for this stuff in the face of all sorts of vitriolic attacks against him. The other person, spineless. Tulsi Gabbard resigned in order to support Sanders. Whatever you want to say about her, she was willing to do it. This person was playing politics, and when asked about it, continuously and flagrantly lied. The fix was in. There was a secret letter showing that she was going to support Hillary Clinton going all the way back to 2013. Every time she's asked about it, she deflects. Cenk Uygur has an interview with her, and again, she deflects. And him being an absurdly bad interviewer, especially for people that he likes and he wants to push, just moves on to the next question. Those things are problematic. I have two people I can choose from. One is spongy, the other is not. I choose the one that's non-spongy. I'm just saying. If Cristobal wants to know, and if Cristobal is asking, that's why. That's why. Then gets on saying they rigged it, and then the next day they didn't rig it. Which one is it? Which one is it? Let alone the money taking. It took Chris Hayes. The Young Turks makes their main issue money and politics. That's their mainstay. That's their biggest thing. Money and politics, money and politics, money and politics. Now, they would take $20 million from a Democratic donor. I don't begrudge them for this because they're a media company and their company is the key point and they're trying to maximize their profit like the best of us. And they take the money. The catch here is, does the money come with constraints? Oh, that's the interesting point. Now, their argument is politicians who are taking money are falling in line or moving in the direction of the cash. And we know ourselves, the Washington Post, New York Times, started writing advertisements for oil companies. And the oil companies were chest thumping that they got the New York Times to essentially shift their position in line with who was giving them the cash. Why wouldn't the same thing be true for the Young Turks? Just asking. And I say this in the sense of Democrats. Why would you not ask Warren that question of whether she's going to take money after she leaves office? That's your singular issue. That's your singular issue. It took Chris Hayes to ask that question. Meaning this. Warren told Chris Hayes that I will not unilaterally disarm. After the primaries, I will take all the money that anybody wants to give me. Republicans are going to do the same, so I'm going to do the same. That's the point. But not in the primaries. In the primary, she's given this idea that I'm just like Bernie Sanders. I'm just like Bernie Sanders. But after the primary, you have nowhere else to go. So yes, I'm taking that money. So yes, I'm taking that cash. Why aren't you taking it in the primaries? Why aren't you taking it in the primaries? My point is the position doesn't make sense. If you are saying money has some influence on politicians, I agree with that. Fair enough. And so I'm not going to take money. Fair enough. And then you turn around and say, but I'm just not doing that for the primary. What? But you are doing it in the main? Yes. So why did you not take it in the primary? Right? Like, the logic doesn't make sense unless you're only doing it in the primary for optics. You're only doing it for optics. If Cristobal wants to know why I don't support Warren, let's start there. Wondering if y'all can help me figure something out. So Warren and Sanders have a fair amount of overlap ideologically, but have very different coalitions. I'm wondering why. If you're a Sanders supporter and really can't stand Warren or vice versa, can you tell me why? It's not that I can't stand her. I have no animosity towards her. There's no disgust or anything. I just think she's spongy. And if I get the option from somebody who's spongy versus not, clearly I'm going to take the one that's not spongy. She's spongy. I don't trust her. 1,000 times. I don't trust her. And people responded also, essentially attesting to the same. Right here. Tulsi supporter here. I think I speak for many of us in regards to the two. Tulsi went to Standing Rock, endorsed Bernie, packed lobbyists, money free, voted no on Trump's military budget, off act, anti-regime change, stood up to Assange for Assange, Manning, Snowden, and the Fourth Estate. Warren did none of those things. Warren did none of those things. Why would I stand up for somebody who wouldn't stand up for me? Right? I mean, that is what it boils down to. Let's see. And this. When the resistance gives Trump a standing ovation. I don't know if this is, I don't think it's this one. But I do remember this. And I was trying to line up like Sanders' suit and everything else to figure out which one it was. Let me see. He's wearing that tie. Is that the same tie? Damn it, I can't see it from here. All right. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Is this the same speech? Motherfucker. Hold on. All right. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this the same speech that they are talking about in that picture? I can't be sure.
Tonight, we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country.
No Democrat should have clapped for that. None. Just on politics grounds. One of your own is being attacked. That attack was out there specifically for Sanders. And just to show you what I mean. Now, of course, these are Republicans. But I was looking for Democrats to sit up. So that was the day that the women representatives weren't like white or something to that effect. I couldn't find, I was looking at the stadium and everything. Maybe you guys can tell me, is that the same speech? Is that the same speech? If that's the same speech, that is horrible. That is horrible if that's the same speech. Find picture in KB thread with Bernie Warren split. I see. Prime Minister in Greenland's Twitter account. I can assure you that our country, unlike your U.S. president, is not for sale. Wow. You know, that's... Yeah, because Greenland is, they gave a funeral to their ice, because their ice, Greenland is going to be ice-free in 200 years. Oh, I like this. Cornel West answers. Sister Warren is a progressive Monday through Friday. Brother Bernie is progressive all the time. 24/7, 365. That's how Cornel talks. Brother Bernie. I love the way he talks. She wants to know. We're giving her an answer, right? Giving her an answer. Why do people like Sanders versus Bernie? I never had a plan for that before 2019 because I'm a capitalist to my bones. Yeah. A tick to the left capitalist. And again, spongy. She's a spongy factor. She's untrustworthy. Let's see. Who else? Let's see. Right, when Warren has a plan, she doesn't mean she had the same plan for 25 years. Yes, that's true. It means it was like just last year. That's astonishing to me that people give that a pass. A woman starts running for president and all of a sudden has a bunch of plans just over the course of like a year. The guy's been running for the last, he has been consistent for like 30 years. And she's been untrustworthy in case after case after case. But just because she says, I have a plan for this, I have a plan for that, I have a plan for this. They're like, oh, we like her. As if having a plan is the end all be all. It's nonsense. She's a spongy, untrustworthy political actor who, yeah, she's not getting my vote. Right here. Holy shit, Elizabeth Warren spoke to the Federalist Society, the racist legal organization that Trump is using to fill the federal courts. Washington CNN, long before Elizabeth Warren became one of the nation's leading progressive voices, she had an academic who articulated a conservative worldview on economy. As a law professor in the 1980s and the 1990s, Warren criticized the abundance of government regulation, calling them tax and... So, I don't ding her for that. People change. People do grow. I don't ding her for that. I don't ding her for that. I guess my point is very basic. I don't trust her. Elizabeth Warren has come calling as recently as April. Kamala Harris, the first-term senator of California, has made repeated visits starting as early as the third month in office. Former Vice President Joseph Biden is no stranger to the big money donor world of New York. He was here in April, his third such visit in 3 months. The night after Mr. Biden's April visit, Mrs. Warren mingled with donors at the Manhattan home of Mark Green, a former New York City public advocate, the official reason being her 2018 re-election bid, for which he already had stockpiled $50 million. A few months earlier, Meyer S. Fruchtner, the vice chairman of NASDAQ, hosted another fundraiser reception for Mrs. Warren. Mrs. Warren attended a party fundraiser in July at the residence of the former USB executive, and in the summer she met privately in Washington with J.P. Morgan Chase chief executive Jamie Dimon. I think Senator Warren's views are more pragmatic. I think she is very different in conversation than when she's on the truth stump, said Robert Wolf, the former USB executive who hosted Mrs. Warren. I love that. I love that. That's the Hillary Clinton's, we have a behind the scenes position and we have a in the front position. I love that. He's like, she seems to be very different when she's trying to get money out of me. She seems to be very different when she's trying to hit me up for cash. She really does. When she's on the stump, she's giving it to us, but when she's talking to me in person, she's very, very different. MSNBC made that point too. They said, yeah, they don't really trust Sanders, but with Warren, that's a person they think they can do business with. MSNBC has been piping Warren like nobody's business. They've been hyping her like nobody's business. She's not trusted. She will take money after she leaves the primary. That's a flat fact. She can have policy proposal for anything. She's spongy. She didn't support Bernie Sanders, and yet now she wants my support. Whatever. You didn't support my guy, I'm not going to support you. And beyond that point, there's already somebody in the race that doesn't fit those descriptions. I don't know why people are voting for Warren. If it's on policy, that's always strange to me. Fair enough. But I'll take the guy who I think is authentic, who's not a spongy factor, who doesn't raise his hand for any and everything that comes up new just to get support. And has changed our public discourse for the last 8 years into what it is now. This is a world created by Sanders. I want to give him the ball to finish it. So, just saying. Daedalus stream. Oh, thank you, Daedalus. But leave a comment. Bernie or Guillotine 2020. Let's get hashtag dances with Wall Street trending. Find picture in KB thread. Bernie Warren split. Oh, okay. I haven't seen that one yet. But you guys get my point. This is see, I want to know what they were clapping about. That's my issue. Yeah, I don't know what they're clapping about. Don't know what they're clapping about. Yeah. Oh, here's another one. Crystal Ball wants to know. Don't forget, Warren's senior advisor on education policy is pro-charter school graduate of the Walmart-funded school privatization machine, Teach for America. If Warren is elected, we can say goodbye to our public school funding. Yeah. I read this one about Jamie Dimon saying she's different in person. She's different in person. I like her in person. This is Sanders.
Country as to whether health care is a right of all of its people. I intend to play a role in it because I believe that we need a national health care system.
That is 1987. 1987. Unpopular. The guy in the corner, the radical. You couldn't even get Obama to touch public option. He's out there in 1987 screaming for national healthcare system. I guess my point is, if Crystal Ball really wants to know, one has to do with consistency, the other one has to do with sponginess. One has to do with somebody who's, this is what I believe in, and I'm going to stay with that point, and I'm going to push for that point aggressively. And the other person, Johnny come lately. Raise her hand when it's convenient. Weather vane Warren. It's not just the policies, Crystal Ball. It's not just policy. People can have a policy on anything. Did you honestly believe that Hillary Clinton's platform was going to be enacted when Hillary Clinton got in office? No. Policies are just what you tell people in order to get elected. The question becomes, do you believe it? And in Sanders' case, yes. In Elizabeth Warren's case, who knows? Who knows? And right there is the distinction. And right there is one of the key reasons why people support Sanders, not Warren. And by the way, Standing Rock and not supporting Sanders in that election is a big deal. That is a dramatic deal. Because now she wants people who supported Sanders or who support Sanders to back her. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Bernie Sanders is running for president of the United States in 2016 against Hillary Clinton. Ideologically, supposedly, the number 2 person, by her own definition, of being the most progressive candidate in Massachusetts, doesn't come out to support Sanders because she has a secret letter supporting Clinton. I have a secret letter supporting Sanders. And all of Sanders supporters has a secret letter supporting Sanders. So we're supporting Sanders. That's where I'm at. Warren doesn't give out support. I needed her to support Sanders when it was inopportune. She wouldn't do it. She wouldn't do it. And that makes me think I wouldn't even support her if she wins. Which is fucked up, but it's true. Balthazar, Elizabeth, good plans are just Bernie's plans with expired warranties. The rest are just bad plans that she dropped the moment she gets into money in general. Yes. Yeah. If you want to know crystal ball, you can watch this. I would even cut this video so you can see this video. All of these people who are answering your very specific question. Warren sold out to Sanders in 2016 for a cabinet position. Why would it be different for the DNC to offer some cabinet positions to split progressive vote now? That's a good point. I mean, if it's this notion that Biden is going to win and that Warren is only in the race to split the vote and she get a cabinet position after Biden wins and gets rid of Sanders. It's a little Machiavellian, but it's not necessarily beyond the realm of debate. Look, I would say this. Either way, Warren doesn't get my vote. I'm sorry. The more I think about it, the less I want her she'd give my vote. You didn't support my guy. And people could say, well, she didn't support Sanders. Yeah, but ideologically, she should have supported Sanders. Tulsi Gabbard did. Tulsi Gabbard took the hit and did. Warren played politics. Again, just like Standing Rock. Just like Standing Rock. She played politics. Just like, reparations. She's playing politics. Just like Medicare for all. She's playing politics. All of these things are just political positions. How do you know that they're real? The only thing that you know is real is that makes you punch a banker. And I gotta be honest, at this point, I don't even know if that's real, seeing as what Jamie Dimon had to say when them two talk face to face. She seems to be a bit different in person. She seems to be not as, aggressive than she is on the stump. You couldn't vote for my guy when we needed your support. And now you're on the stage asking for my support. And I'm supposed to give you the support that you wouldn't offer to my guy? Kick rocks. Kick rocks. That's where I'm at. In fact, the more I think about it, that's where I'm at. Kick rocks. Kick rocks. If you want to know whether or not Warren should get your support, did she support your guy when she needed your support? Stop right there. When you needed her support, meaning for him to win Massachusetts, whether or not Massachusetts would have, God, I can never say that word, whether or not Massachusetts would have been the thing that would allow Sanders to kind of get that win and get her momentum and everything else, put all that to the side for the moment. She didn't support your guy when you needed that support. Why should you support her when she needs yours? That's where I'm at. And people may disagree with me on this. They may say this is water under the bridge. But fact of the matter is there's not a consequence for bad behavior, then the bad behavior will persist itself. That woman is literally in the primary saying she's not taking money purely for political effect. That's all it is. When she gets out of the primary, she is going to take all the money in the world from people like that. Jamie Dimon, from people like that. From people like that. Ask me again why I don't support her. Ask me again. Do this entire fucking video again. The more I think about it, the less I like her. It's not that I don't like her policies. And the thing that people try to get across is not policy. It's her. It's her. It's her. 1,000 times. It's her. It's her. And I got to be honest, beyond that point, I don't think she beats Trump. I don't think she beats Trump. Nick Strickland. Why do people think Biden will make it past Iowa caucus? He never made it that far in the last 2 presidential runs. If Biden does win, Trump will win a landslide and Warren will lose an electoral college. Warren will win California, which means she would win the electoral college. Yes. That doesn't mean she would win the vote total. So yes, I agree with you. Biden, I keep saying I don't think Biden is going to get out the primaries. The question really becomes who's outside of him. I said maybe 6 months ago, literally, that Warren was going to undercut. Warren was the corporate candidate, not Biden. I said that because there were articles that were coming out that Biden was having trouble getting money from like billionaires and millionaires and those type of things. They didn't think he could win. I think Warren is their choice. She's the middle ground. We don't want the socialist, but this other guy seems out of it. I think Warren is the middle ground. If we can kick Biden out, make it Warren versus Sanders, then I think Sanders can beat Warren. Same here. Agreed. Joe Snake, 100. Biden is finished. Warren was always the main threat. I think Warren is the main threat. I would say this, though. It is fascinating to me that you have what's considered to be the 2 most progressive candidates in 2 and 3 position. Almost ensconced, like nobody's even close. And the guy who's ahead is roundly considered mentally not altogether there and has to take rest breaks because he's not up to snuff to do the job. I find that really interesting. I find that extraordinarily interesting. I really do. I'm going to cut this video so Crystal Ball can see this video. But I've done this video on so many different occasions to explain the difference and why one is a spongeable factor. And the other one's not. Here's another one. Her absence in the battlefield in 2016 tells me she lacks integrity, political courage, and is opportunistic. I don't know these people, but all of us are saying the same thing. So, just saying. I vacillate back and forth on whether or not I would support Warren, if I'm being honest, between Trump and Warren and her. Because I think Trump's atrocious. And I think if Trump wins again, it'll be fucking horrendous. Like, what he's going to do is going to be monstrous. Like Medicare, Social Security, all those things are on a chopping block. But I gotta be honest, I'm not sure. There needs to be a penalty for bad behavior, especially in a political sense. You don't support my guy, but I'm supposed to turn around and support you? Yeah, I'm almost in the no camp. I think I'm in a no camp. Just on principle. Balthazar, remember who Biden was up against in 2008 and 2012? Sarah fucking Palin and Paul Ryan. Do you even lift, bro? Ryan, he'll get cream. Paul, do you even lift, bro? Ryan. Oh, God. Yeah, but he did a good job in those debates. Look, my argument is that Biden is a shadow of his former self. That's my argument. If you look at Biden in those debates, Biden did a really good job in those debates. And I don't mean this in the sense of what you need to do in the debate changes depending on the debate. In that debate, Biden couldn't make Sarah Palin look bad. Because if he did, people will wag their finger at him. Oh, she doesn't know much about politics. Joe Biden was taking advantage of her. Kind of like the Al Gore and George Bush thing. A grown man being beaten to death. And they're like, oh, that's sweet. And I said, boy, he doesn't have all his marbles. And Al Gore was just, being so bright and stuff when he was hitting them. And so Joe Biden had to deal with her with kid gloves. But that's a political calculation that he did. And succeeded. He was good at it. And he, again, took down Paul Ryan. But he was good at it. He had a certain amount of political acumen in doing so. That seems lacking now. He's a shadow of his former self. It's a shadow of the man that he was. And people bristle when I say, oh, that sounds so bad. And yet it's true. I want to show you something. This is Assange being ripped out of his house. If you guys watch the channel, you've seen this video more than once. This channel has been extremely supportive of Assange. If you don't know what your government is doing, you can't control your government. Like, do you realize that most of the military budget is black? It's black. Congress doesn't know what is being done with the money that Congress is appropriating. Half of it goes towards, infantry and everything else and paying for us. But I'm talking about like the bases, the black sites, the things and the projects and the programs that the military is doing. Some of these things are put off into companies, and so there is not clarity from the standpoint of the public. If you don't know what your government is doing, what are you voting for? Meaning, if your point in voting and activism and political statesmanship, populism, is to have some level of control over the behavior of your government. Can't do it if you don't know what it's doing. Shining a flashlight on those things that you yourself are philosophically bound to control, even legalistically in charge of maintaining, is important. I understand why government wouldn't want it. The public itself is a different entity, and the public, in the perspective of the public, should care about those things. Julian Assange, whatever you want to think of him, was the spotlight. He was that flashlight. WikiLeaks is that flashlight. It allows people to give that information so they can peek behind the scenes to be aghast by the things that their government is doing, including legal behavior that the government is doing. Andrew Zigman is one of my subscribers. Zigman apparently was going through Chelsea Manning as a POW and putting these signs up. Oftentimes people feel powerless in the positions that they end up in. What am I supposed to do about that? What am I supposed to do about that? And almost in a weird psychological way, when something is too big, when the challenge is too extreme, the person doesn't go with this notion of, I'm going to accomplish this thing that's too extreme. They get resigned to, I can't do anything about it anyway. It's too big. Can't scale that mountain. It's too big. If it was a hill, yeah, I'll try it. But if it's a mountain, what's the point? I'm going to fail anyway. They can't conceive of getting over the mountain, so they don't even try. Andrew didn't allow that to bother him. He's like, fuck, I need to do something. I don't know what it is. The least I can do is try to get support. So apparently he was going through putting these signs up. Chelsea Manning is a POW, which is true, by the way. No extradition. Assange told us the truth. Again, that's true. And apparently he gets a summons. The state saying don't do that. He has to go to court over this. He has to go to court over this. He says, let's make sure we aren't rude or mean about this, but the prosecutor doesn't seem to understand the importance of Julian's struggle. Farah Emeka, the Oberlin prosecutor, can be reached at 440-774-8519. You can also listen to the audio from my pre-trial here. The prosecutor is not going to care. The prosecutor is not going to care. And he also goes into city council. Now they may. Brian Burgess, city council president, Linda Slocum, vice president of council, John Clerk, law director. I'm going to put the information below so you guys can see it. Again, don't be rude. Don't be assholes. Don't get yourself locked up. Don't get put in trouble. None of that stuff. The prosecutor's not going to understand because the prosecutor has a very narrow window. They're technocrats. Keep in mind, you just have a prosecutor that is literally running for office that kept a man in prison that they knew were innocent, or for that matter, kept people in prison that the judge said release because they wanted to pay them 8 cents on the dollar, essentially 8 cents away from slave labor. But Andrew is right. Andrew, you got my support, man. Tony Walters. When bought the DNC list, she agreed to fundraisers. Tony Walter. Oh, yes, that's true. That is true. But that email that I was talking about happened before. That happened before. That was when she was running for a Senate race. That was for the presidential race. Meaning the relationship precedes any notion of running in the race. The big money that she was getting, or the money that she was getting, is money that she will also probably go back to those relationships after she gets out the primary. That's my point, and that's the point that people are making. She's already said, yes, I will take big money after I get out the race, after the primary is done. take all the money I can get. Anybody that won't give it to me, I'm going to take it. So there's that. I don't trust Warren. And I'm not alone in that. So, just saying. Baltazar. Warren's about as progressive as Rachel Dolezal was black. No amount of spray on Bernie applies to her green military will change her into progressive. Yeah. Ditto. Look, I don't like using the terminology. The labels get a little slippery for what people what they mean when they say progressive. My issue is not her policies. No issue with her policy. My issue is her. Not because she's a woman, because she's spongy. And I don't trust her. You didn't support my guy for political reasons. Why should I support you for political reasons? There needs to be a consequence for bad behavior. Just saying. That's called not giving my support. No Bernie Sanders supporter should support Elizabeth Warren. I mean, why? I mean, come on. Why should you? I mean, think about it for the moment. When given the opportunity, she had the chance to support Sanders. She chose not to. That was a choice she made. That was a political choice she made. That wasn't an ideological choice. Ideologically, supposedly, the spray on Bernie and the policies that she's coming out with now that she essentially stripped from Sanders, that people love her for, mind you, they're just Sanders policies. Those policies that she just stripped from Sanders, I'm supposed to believe that. No, I don't believe that. You didn't even have the balls to support Sanders. Why am I supposed to believe that you're going to have to stones to actually try to push through those policies? I don't. You can get behind any policy you want. The issue is you. That's the issue. Just saying. All right. There's one more that I want to do, and this is going to get the video demonetized entirely, but I want to talk about it. So this is so everybody asked the question, why was Epstein taken off the suicide list? Everyone asked that question, right? And because it seems so dicey that he would be taken off that list, people are like, this looks horrible. I mean, how did a guy who's supposed to be on the suicide list get taken off the suicide list? I have that answer. Shout out to HB for sending me this link to this. So, two things. The suicide watch list requires every 15-minute checks, not every 30 minutes. I got that wrong. I read that somewhere, but another article is saying 15 minutes. So let's go with 15 minutes. Or 15 to 30. Also, there was supposed to be a psychologist or at the very least somebody to give an okay to take him off the watch list. Epstein's own lawyers asked for him to be taken off the watch list. Epstein's own lawyers asked for him to be taken off the watch list. In fact, him and his lawyers were in meetings for like 12 hours, if I remember correctly. And their push was, we want him off the watch list. Now, I look at this and say, I don't give a shit what his lawyers want. The guy tried to commit suicide. It is the state's responsibility to make sure he's safe and sound when he goes to trial. If he offs himself after trial, okay, fair enough. But I want names, which means I need him to go to trial. State should want names. It is the incentive of the state to want names. Meaning, they need him alive to give those names because nobody else knows those names. Meaning, every power, every tool at the disposal of the state should have been on Marshall to make sure his ass got the trial, especially after he tried to off himself. I don't give a shit what his lawyers wanted. I don't care what his lawyers wanted. I'd imagine that his lawyers want him out on the street also. You didn't do that. Clearly, his lawyers wanted him to be able to stay at home. You didn't allow that. There's all sorts of things his lawyers might want. His lawyers might want to bring him lobster. Might want to bring him coke so he can take coke hits. Who knows? There's all sorts of things that his lawyers may want. But if his life is at stake based on what his lawyers want, his lawyers can kick rocks. His lawyers can kick rocks. That is what the New York Post is reporting, though. Millionaire pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, who apparently killed himself while in federal custody in Manhattan, was taken off suicide watch in late July at the request of his lawyers, according to a report. The disgraced money manager was found unresponsible in a single inmate cell in Metropolitan Correctional Facility Saturday and was declared dead at New York Presbyterian Lower Manhattan Hospital. Epstein has been meeting with his lawyers for up to 12 hours a day before the request to be taken off the suicide watch, sources familiar with the matter told the Wall Street Journal. He was found hanging by his neck about 6:30 in the morning on Saturday, a source told the Post. Epstein was taken off suicide watch, which required a check every 15 minutes, despite the incident where he tried to off himself. He had been downgraded to special observation status, which required 2 guards to make separate checks on him every 30 minutes. But that procedure was not followed, a source had told Reuters. Under the status, Epstein was also supposed to have a cellmate, a person familiar with the matter told the Journal. Meaning, okay, so I was right and I was wrong. I kept saying 30 minutes. The 30 minutes is what he was when he croaked. The 15 minutes was him being under suicide watch. Okay, so he was under special status. He was supposed to get watched every 30 minutes anyway. That didn't happen. There was supposed to be someone to agree to him to be let go. That didn't happen. I mean, the protocols. And beyond that point, there was supposed to be a cellmate. Apparently his cellmate was out doing something. That's awesome. So right here. He had been downgraded to special observation status, which required 2 guards to make separate checks on him every 30 minutes, but that procedure was not followed, a source had told Reuters. Under the status, Epstein was also supposed to have a cellmate, a person familiar with the matter told the Journal. His cellmate was apparently had left, possibly for a court appearance or another appointment, and was not immediately replaced as required by the protocol, the source told the paper. In addition, the decision to remove an inmate from the suicide watch would normally have to be okayed by the jail's suicide prevention program coordinator and then approved by the warden, according to NBC News, which cites the protocol. Once an inmate has been placed on watch, the watch may not be terminated under any circumstances without the program coordinator or designee performing a face-to-face evaluation according to the Federal Bureau of Prisons guidelines. That didn't happen. None of that happened in this case. All of it failed. All of it failed. Epstein, having a conversation with his lawyers, probably wanted to off himself. He probably wanted to off himself, meaning this most likely was a suicide. Whether somebody allowed him to do it or not, he probably said, oh my God, they are going to put me in a prison system. I am going to be fucked in the ass. I don't want to be fucked in the ass. They're going to put me in prison. Oh God, all of my wealth. I used to be able to go anywhere. I had a whole island full of young, delicious 13-year-olds that I can touch at any time I want. Oh, I can't. You gotta give me some space, dog. You gotta give me some space. He probably did off himself. He probably saw what was coming. I gotta be honest. I look at this stuff from the standpoint of World War II. I know I look at a lot of stuff from the standpoint of war. But you had a lot of these guys who said, I see what's coming. Fuck that. I see what's coming. Fuck that. I know what I did, or at the very least, I know what people are saying I did, and there will be retribution for it. And the moment that these ass cheeks get into a jail cell and I am left to my devices, I am going to be a victim, a perpetual victim for however long I stay in prison, either from the guards themselves who hate my guts, from the guards that would allow somebody to come into my jail cell and off me. Like, he knows what's coming. So when people say, oh, he doesn't have the courage to do it, what, he has the courage to get fucked in the ass? I mean, come on, which is worse? And I'm saying this from the standpoint of somebody who has all of his needs met. All of his needs met. As a uber millionaire. All sorts of political connections, media connections, financial connections, is buying one house or another house, getting a pool, a jacuzzi, goes anywhere he wants, gets on a private jet to go to this particular place, has his own island, and all of a sudden, bam, gone, all at once. And the entirety of the media has drawn a circle around him and said, that guy had a pedophile ring. And you're that guy. Which is easier? Offing yourself or going through whatever is about to take place. I suppose it depends on the person. I would say that the threat is typically worse than the effect. And the threat in this case is monstrous. And catch is that we haven't even gotten to the trial. We haven't even gotten to the trial. This was literally just starting. So if he is trying to get space to commit suicide, I understand it. It's a secondary question of, however, who allowed that? Because even going by taking him off the suicide watch, he still had to be watched every 30 minutes. There were still other protocols that were supposed to kick in place that didn't kick into place. Who is responsible for this? Who is responsible for allowing him to do this? And that's assuming he even did it. That's assuming he even did it. I mean, that's an assumption in and of itself. I'm still not entirely taken away from this notion that somebody offed him. And the reason I say that, because the moment that you go with this notion that somebody turned their head to allow it, then this notion that somebody else did it doesn't necessarily go that far away from it. The catch here is, though, he was getting his lawyers to give him space to do this. He was getting his lawyers to give him space. J. Scott, I'm coming around to believe he committed suicide. Me too. But I do not think he was highly encouraged and promised conditions will be greenlit to do so. Oh, yes. Jay, yes. Fucking Jay, I agree with you. I'm beginning to believe that myself. I mean, because that part, that's... If he didn't do it, then he's not talking to his lawyers. Like if it's him in prison saying, fuck man, I want to live. He is trying to stay alive. He is not trying to get his lawyers to take him off suicide watch. He's trying to get off suicide watch because he wants to off himself. And yeah, he's given space to do so. And look, the question, and this might just be one of those things of, there are a lot of people's heads on the line, and people were willing to turn their heads to allow him to do what he needed to do so he doesn't open his mouth. I'm coming around to that too, J. Scott. That's where I am. I'm burning Guillotine 2020. Off topic. Have you seen Rogan Dr. Evo deep fake? I have not. Bernie Guillotine. If you were shocked about finding out Epstein wanting to commit suicide, just imagine how shocked Epstein was when they told him. Oh, that's funny. It's like, if you were shocked to hear Epstein committed suicide, imagine how shocked Epstein was, when he heard that he was going to commit suicide. Yeah, I imagine he was shocked as shit. Donald Smead, if it was Dr. Kevorkian who cleared Epstein. It was Dr. Kevorkian who cleared Epstein, was it? Please take off glasses. You're about to be taken off suicide watch. Hillary Clinton's goons. The Clinton body count. You know, I gotta be honest, that's the funniest shit in the world to me. Who did I think it was Tim Black said that. The Clinton body count. And I fell the fuck out laughing when I heard that term. But apparently that's the thing. That's a hashtag now. Clinton body count. That's funny. Rob R. Warren policies are still neoliberal, like student debt. She puts all of these ifs, and then you get Bernie's if you have student debt is forgiven, right? Well, you know, he was doing that in the last election, though. It was like climate change stuff, like fracking. No, I'm against it. Well, it's okay in this case, in this case. And it's like there's so many ifs that you've essentially just said, yes, it's okay. But you want to be able to say no, but still, say the yes. Because you don't want to really say the no. Like, you don't really believe in the no, if that makes sense. In this case, yeah, we shouldn't have student debt. That's what I believe in, so that's my position. And Elizabeth, well, and this caveat, that caveat. Do you believe in it or not? Do you believe in it or not? Let's see. Maggie Smith. Thank you, Maggie Smith. Should have called ICS for both incidents. Had to be filmed. First red flag. I worked in prison. I think he was offed. The journal is wrong. You don't use serial to watch your chromos. Crazy. What? You don't use serial. Oh, I think you said prisoners or offenders to watch your chromos. Crazy. So Maggie Smith, like I said, I vacillate between the two. Look, I think it's weird. Let me say it this way. If he wasn't trying to commit suicide, I don't think he talks to his lawyers to get off suicide watch. Like that's the part. Unless his lawyers are lying, or unless the source is lying. It's possible that the source is lying. It's very, look, I am perpetually in the not knowing. All of us are. And all of us err towards ones or zeros, meaning on one side or the next in regards to what we think is true. I don't think it's impossible that he offed himself. The problem is that if he did off himself, there's a lot of things that had to break down for him to do it. And it comes to this thing of what allowed those processes to break down. And the moment that you tap on this notion of the processes were allowed to break down for him to off himself, you could also go with this notion, side by side, he was offed and people looked the other way. I hope you understand what I mean. All sorts of things had to fail for Epstein to commit suicide. All sorts of things. New York Post, the Washington Journal, all of these guys are just having sources. People who tell them things. Stenographers. Hey, this happened. This is what we're told. That's an anonymous person in the shadows that is telling them those things, and you must completely accept the perspective of the organization and the media organization is being earnest with you. But you don't know that, nor do you know their sources. This is that point. If Epstein did talk to his lawyer to try to get free time to off himself, again, that lends evidence towards this notion that he might have did it. Even if that is true, it is also possible that somebody did it for him, that he couldn't pull it off himself. I'm not strong enough to do it. I need somebody else to do it for me, etc. It's also possible that somebody gave him space to do so. Look, we're going to put you off watch. This guy is going to be, at a court hearing, and you'll have an hour. The guards are not going to come by. That stuff. But the moment that you get there, where you said the guards are not going to come by to check on you, and this guy's going to be out of your bunk for X amount of time because there's a prison thing, you have clear right. The moment that you get there, other people are involved. And if other people are involved, it is just as possible to get that scenario as somebody coming in and doing it on it, suiciding him, let's say it that way. I don't know. I float back and forth between the stuff and consider both possible. I think he's dead. That part I'm more clear on. How? I have no idea. None. And I take your point, Maggie. Should have been called ICS for both incidents. Had to be filmed. First red flag. Oh, your point is it shouldn't have been an incident where he wasn't under film. It should have been one of those things where they were watching him, especially if he tried to commit it once before. Your point is this looks dicey in and of itself in the procedures and the processes that they used in this. It looks dicey. And prisons are black boxes. Take for the moment what would need to be true for someone to go into Epstein's cell, off Epstein, strangling him, and then the medical examiner said suicide. Not much more than what would need to be true for Epstein for all this stuff to take place. I mean, we're literally talking about a guy who's supposed to be watched every 30 minutes. Didn't happen. Supposed to have an inmate in the cell with him. Didn't happen. And was supposed to be cleared for release in face-to-face evaluation and a visit from ward. Didn't happen. None of that stuff happened. What needs to happen to allow this individual to either be suicided or for him to commit suicide himself? Everything that happened was all he needed to happen. Who's turning their heads? That's the question. That's the question, Maggie. Who's turning their heads? Baltazar, at best, the jail is responsible for criminal negligent homicide. Yes, Baltazar, yes. At worst, assisting in homicide and obstruction of evidence. Yes. The part that's not a conspiracy theory. The part where we don't go down a rabbit hole. In and of itself, there should be there should be consequences to this. You allowed a man to commit suicide. A man who tried to commit suicide once before and was suffering mental duress under the conditions to which he was being imprisoned. You have a responsibility not to allow him to do that. And every faculty that was involved in ensuring that he didn't do that failed. Every faculty failed. And so people were outside of this and said, this looks really strange. All of you guys wanted this guy dead, and lo and behold, this guy's dead. And the media says, it was just incompetence. It's just incompetence. And the jail system says, oh, it was just incompetence, our bad. Nobody believes that. Nobody believes the incompetence argument. Look, either Epstein wanted himself dead and was given the space to do it. Either Epstein wanted himself dead and somebody did it on his behalf, meaning they just cleared out that stuff, allowing that to take place. And at that point, you can say it looks like a suicide, even though the thing is broken, which is why they had the anomalous results in the homicide, in the report for Epstein. Or he did it himself and they were just incompetent. I mean, any one of those things could be true. And all of those things are atrocious. So yeah. Agreed, Bill. Absolutely agree. All right, let's go to the last story. In fact, Epstein thing probably should be the last story because we're going like 2 hours and I am dragging ass. What time is it? Yeah. I want to make sure I get everybody though. I'm going to have to sever the Epstein one because they demonetize every video of Epstein. You can mention his name and they demonetize it. It's aggravating. It's like, forget the fact that it's true and forget the fact it's something that may have political consequences. That matters less. It matters less. Maxwell, now a blonde in London. She's gone to London? No way. No way. So here's another thing. The Ghislaine Maxwell. I showed this picture the other day. And I think my point was we're being trolled. And in fact, I think I even said, we're being trolled. This is insane. Ghislaine Maxwell was found at an In-N-Out burger joint. Now, Ghislaine Maxwell is the paramour of deceased millionaire pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. And supposedly she was the one that was helping run that pedophile ring and other times got involved within the escapades. There was conjecture that Epstein might have been part of Mossad or some kind of intelligence service. And even conjecture that the pedophile ring was in a way of gaining control over various people by having, let's say, photos or honeypots of them of sorts. Honeypots being children in this case. But getting videos of them essentially having sex with kids, in which case you can blackmail them forever and gain a certain degree of political influence. So that was the thought. Acosta was told that this is beyond his pay grade. So people start asking this question, is this guy into intelligence? Like, is this guy part of Mossad? And this was just the cynical politics that these guys have where they try to blackmail various leaders in the political space. Don't like him. Sorry. I was trying to find this picture of her. But Ghislaine Maxwell was at an In-N-Out burger joint reading a book talking about Book of Honor, Life and Times of CIA. Right here. Book of Honor. Do you honestly believe she didn't know she was being photographed? Do you honestly believe that she didn't know this photo was going to be taken and that this story was going to be written and that all of it... Look, whether you want to call this a dodge, whether you want to call this what, whether you want to call this a message, she is clearly sending a message. The question becomes, what is that message? She's reading the Book of Honor, Life and Times of the CIA stuff. Look, whether it's CIA, whether it's Mossad, who the hell knows? And if he was working in some kind of intelligence service, the outer public doesn't know that. Like, and that doesn't give him permission to have sex with children. So, you know, whether he is or not, it doesn't really matter. But the story is so bizarre, man. It's so bizarre. Cory Booker. I want to show you something.
Have right now, and I was just in Milwaukee.
The
power of the people is always greater than the people in power. But the challenge we have right now, and I was just in Milwaukee holding a big rally, that's a city alone that if we had turned out to vote in the last election, just Milwaukee could have changed the destiny of an entire state. And that means all of these tactics. Why are Republicans and Russians doing so much to try to subvert the number of African-American voters?
You believe that the Russian government is trying to subvert the African-American vote? And I'm sick of these black exploitation leaders putting stupid shit like this out. You believe that African-Americans are so comically stupid and ridiculous that the Russians and the stupid clickbait shit that goes out there, that they're like, I was going to vote for Hillary Clinton in numbers greater than 90% if it wasn't for the fucking Russians. Is that what you're saying? Kamala Harris said stupid shit like this. African Americans are so stupid that they were taken in by the Russians That's what they continuously tell me, that the blacks were taken in by the Russians.
That's a city alone.
Otherwise, they would have voted for Hillary Clinton in numbers that went beyond the 90%. I don't like Booker. I've never liked Cory Booker. I've never liked Cory Booker. I mean, and you know, there's another point. Cory Booker is a senator. He's Senator Cory Booker. Do you remember this? This is back during Bush v. Gore. Fuck, I can't pull it up because that's on Moore's video. Do you remember when Bush v. Gore, where all those African Americans, pissed off, disenfranchised, it was like hundreds of thousands, just in Florida alone. And they came up and they said, our vote is being disenfranchised. Florida disenfranchised hundreds of thousands of people in that voting debacle. Representatives, black representatives, stood up, one after the next, saying, I do not approve of this vote. They needed one senator, just one, to contest Bush v. Gore. You think they got it? You think they got it? And Al Gore, Democrat, was so weak and spineless, that he literally gavelled them down. They were fighting for him. And they gavelled him down. That's how weak and spineless Democrats was back then. You think that's changed? You think that's changed? No, that hasn't changed. But you know how strong Democrats are? Cory Booker could get on stage and say that the Russians are trying to get him.
That's a city alone.
The Ruskies.
That if we had turned out to vote in the last election, just Milwaukee could have changed the destiny of an entire state.
Yep.
And that means all of these tactics. Why are Republicans and Russians
and the Russians
so much to try to
Why, Corey? Why, Corey? That's a good question, Corey. Why? I suggest that your ire is directed towards Republicans, not the Russians. Hillary Clinton didn't go to Wisconsin. Whether Hillary Clinton went to Wisconsin or not, the Republicans had a clear plan of shaving off voters from the voting totals. And the voters they were able to shave off went in excess of the number Hillary Clinton would have needed to win. The majority of those voters being black, Asian, etc., Asian, Hispanic voters whose names match a certain demographic that comes across as if they were ethnic, in which case you can shave them off the voter rolls. They did this all across the United States, but especially in areas that Hillary Clinton needed to win. Your issue is Republicans, sir. Your issue is Republicans. I don't think those Facebook and Twitter ads. And if you really care that much about it, maybe you should have did something about the Voting Rights Act when they were taking that thing down. Or maybe you guys should have cared about it when they were attacking unions. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. You've been under assault for the last 20 years. And now that assault is bearing fruit, now you guys are bitching about the Electoral College. Now you guys are bitching about the Republicans and Facebook and Twitter ads. I mean, come on. This is politics. Your goal is to win. Your goal is to win. That means you need to protect your voter base. What that means is when the Republicans are attacking unions, you defend unions full-throatedly and not let them get to the point where they are destroying and killing unions. You realize part of that process is not rhetoric. It's deeds. It's policy. It's when you get into office and you do things to support people in a way that those people continue to give them your support. What Democrats did was the opposite of that. Bill Clinton made a Faustian bargain. I can take tons of cash and I can get incremental because the left has nowhere else to go. And for God knows how long that was true until the left started to migrate when they couldn't see a difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party despite the rhetoric that was being used. It's not the Russians. It's your party. And it's the Republican Party. The issue is both. But if your issue and your ire here shouldn't be pointed at Republicans, you have the most rabid, batshit crazy group of Republicans ever to be housed in this country. And you still lose to them. And you don't ask the question of why do you lose to them? Do you think the public is so disengaged? It doesn't look that way when I see Sanders rallies. Do you believe that they just don't care about issues of healthcare and education and those type of things? It doesn't seem that way in Sanders rallies. Or is it they just lost faith that the Democratic Party was the party of FDR? And I suspect it's more that. They don't believe the nonsense that you put up. In fact, it's even worse because they consider you lying to them when you spout this feel your pain rhetoric without actually having the policies and the temperament and the disposition to implement those things. They don't believe you is your issue. They don't believe you. And not just that, you guys seem to be spineless. So there's also that. I'm not going to keep this longer. This has gone over 2 hours, and I am dragging ass. It would be nice to hear Democrats say something about Kashmir. It would be very nice to hear that. Very nice. Well, two things, two points. Ilhan Omar and Rashid Tlaib are members of Congress of this country. They won election. The people in their constituencies went to the polls and they put them in office and they said, we want you to represent us, this country. We give Israel billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. And the notion that they're going to turn down an elected leader of the United States from visiting is utter nonsense. They did this once before, by the way. South Africa did this. Another apartheid state did this when an African American was trying to visit South Africa. Oh, you're going to stir up trouble, buddy. You're black. We don't want you here. Now, they had no issue with the other members and contingents of their delegation, but they did have it with them. Rashid Tlaib at this point is like, I'm not going. Israel changed its mind after there's public pressure. And she's like, yeah, I'm not going. You're not, I'm not taking your handouts into going to Israel, turn around. You just tried to embarrass us. No, they actually did try to go. She did want to visit her grandmother. She did want to draw a circle around the havoc and the chaos that Israel causes in that region of the globe, in their occupation. Bernie Sanders comes out strong on this point. Very strong on this point. Listen to this.
And if Israel doesn't want members of the United States Congress to visit their country to get a first-hand look at what's going on, and I've been there many, many times, but if he doesn't want members to visit, maybe he can respectfully decline the billions of dollars that we give to Israel.
I wish they were stronger. Not decline, but they shouldn't get. Those are different statements. It's maybe he can decline the money. No, not decline, Sanders. Maybe they shouldn't get the billions of dollars. Israel, I've been there, looks like little America. It does fine on its own. And if they don't want members of our Congress to go, then why the hell are you giving them money? That's under Sanders' administration or any administration. Across the board, I find it to be traitorous that Donald Trump is going to say that Netanyahu shouldn't allow members of Congress to enter the country. That's utter fucking nonsense. If that's true, then Benjamin Netanyahu should never be allowed in this country. No Israeli politician should be allowed in this country. There should be an across-the-board blocking if that's the way they're going to do it. These are elected members of our country. Whether Benjamin Netanyahu knows this or not, we do have members of our community that are Palestinians. We don't keep them in cages and open-air ghettos. They actually have a certain degree of autonomy in this country. And they can hit elected office. In the pursuit of that elected office, or doing that elected office, doing their jobs, they go out and they visit other countries. If Israel doesn't want elected leaders to visit their country, then this country should not be giving Israel billions of dollars at all. And no elected member from Israel should be allowed into this country. There should be an across-the-board blocking of that. It's outrageous. That's my point. It's outrageous that they want to allow it. Not shocked by it. Don't get me wrong. It's a right-wing apartheid government. So I'm not necessarily shocked that they'll be racist. It's more so along this thing of just from the standpoint of the country and having some level of I guess support from any notion of Americanism. You back them up in this case, as opposed to I'm going to ding our own country at the behest of Israel. What country does Donald Trump belong to? Steve King. Steve King was the one that kind of made the point about the population wouldn't exist if it wasn't for rape and incest. This is his latest rally. Yeah. Look at all that support. Look at all that support. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. And as a last point, And at this one, I was looking over stuff on my Twitter feed. But there was something else that I wanted to. Oh, I know what it was. Dick Cheney is going to appear at a Trump fundraiser. Be afraid. Be very afraid. Now, for Trump supporters, and I don't mean this like, look, for people who don't like Trump, this doesn't really matter that much. Trump is already atrocious. But for people who are Trump supporters, do those Trump supporters, especially the Trump supporters who like Trump because he doesn't get involved into these regime change, well, that's not true either. Or at the very least, he doesn't use blunt military force. Okay, can't even say that. Hasn't killed a lot of people. You know, can't even say that. He's killed thousands. Hasn't toppled the country. He hasn't torched this country yet. Obama had Libya, Bush had Iraq. Both atrocities. Trump doesn't quite have his yet. If Dick Cheney is meeting at fundraisers for Trump, what the hell is Dick Cheney saying? What the hell is Dick Cheney saying? And considering that Dick Cheney's notable achievement is the Iraq War, the same war that when Trump was on the debate stage, he essentially lit into Jeb Bush over it. What does this mean? What does that mean? Also, at which point does the support of Trump have to be held up to, we supported him for these reasons, he's done none of this stuff, but we still support him? And then the question becomes, okay, why do you really support him? African Americans are stuck with that so often, where it's like, why are they supporting that? Why aren't they supporting that? Ask the same thing of Trump supporters. Why are you supporting something when the guy has literally done the opposite of what he said he was going to do when he got into office? Just saying. Many Jewish people are not Zionists, but most right-wing non-Jewish Trump supporters are. Yeah, that's true. When I was in Israel, I was talking to people, and they were like, yeah, we like Trump. We like Trump. We don't like his policies, but we like Trump. You like him because he supports Israel. And you're okay with his policies because those policies are not towards you. They're for this fucking country. Dick Cheney literally does not have a heartbeat. Yeah, and yet he still walks. He still walks. The beast that walks. All right. I'm going to end this. Abraham came from the continent of Africa. There are many Jews in Eastern Africa. Just saying. Not a political comment. Fair enough, Maggie. They're Zionists until Armageddon. Right, that's when it changes. Look, I have nothing against Israel. Outside of Israel being a country. And that country taking certain policies that I am against. If they didn't take those policies, I wouldn't be against it. I am not against the existence of an Israel. I'm against the existence of an Israel that is occupying Palestine and preventing that from being a country unto itself and an autonomous region. That's what I'm against. Most of the Jews I know are fucking awesome. It's nothing to do with them being Jewish. It's the Israeli thing and what that country is doing. The thing is, when you're talking to them, fucking awesome until it gets to Israel. In which case, that the opinion goes off a fucking cliff. I heard there are a lot of black people in Africa. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. The definition of Zionist means you believe that Israel has a right to exist. No, that's not true. Look, that's like saying definition of feminist. You're giving it a definition. The definition of Zionist, at least the way I have understood it to be, has more to do with you believe that other people can effectively come from pretty much anywhere around the world and live in an area that doesn't belong to them. From the standpoint of Israel being a state and a body that's been in existence for a period of time. No, I don't have this hard thing that they need to leave. My issue is you need to stop occupying. If Israel, but by the way, nor do I have a thing that they need to exist. I look at them as a state. They're a legal fiction, a political entity. That's what I look at them. If Israel vanished from the map and it became a collaborative state between Israel and Palestine and it was one man, one vote, I have no issue with that. Zero issue. I'm an American. I live here. I don't live there. My issues, my concerns are here. They're not there. I don't have the strong need for Israel to exist. By the same token, I don't have a strong need for them not to exist. It's a country like any other. My issue is the occupation. So, and again, Zionist is a It's like feminist. It's like, that person said they're a feminist. Okay, what do you mean by feminist? It's a label. That person called themselves a progressive. Okay, what do you mean by progressive? That person calls themselves a what the fuck ever. And everybody assumes that the labels that they're using are exactly the same. They're just labels. I care about what it is. In this particular case, we have not been fair arbiters. I think that's clear. Media doesn't accept that, but that's strange that the media doesn't accept it. If there was any notion of a fair arbitration between the two, and they came up way with some level of decision, why wouldn't that be against? Why wouldn't that be for? That's just the occupation. Jamarl is America first, make America great again. I live in America, yes. I live here, yes. It would be strange if it wasn't. I live here. I live here. Brett McKinney, fundamentalist Judaism believes Solomon's temple has to be rebuilt for the Messiah to come. Yeah, that gets into that weird religious stuff. Weird religious stuff. You do anything on that Detroiter? Detroiter, what do you mean? I've seen the Detroiter thing. Joe Biden on camera screaming, I'm a Zionist. You don't have to be Jew to be Zionist. Yeah, I know, you don't. You know, that's the funny part. Like, this weird support for Israel. Like, they take it to almost religious things. I think part of it is because we can dump a bunch of weapons, munitions, and they can essentially control that region, and we can deal with that from behind the scenes. Not to mention, AIPAC and the influence AIPAC has in our country. But yeah, man, it's the Zionist thing is weird. Joe Biden has said that you don't have to be Jewish to be Zionist. He calls himself a Zionist. I think it's fucking nonsense. This notion that somebody can be born and raised in New York and they have just as much claim to the land, more so, than a person who's living there, that's fucking nonsense. And yet that's the argument that they would make. When you ask what is a Zionist, that's a Zionist, that particular perspective. Now, if you're saying, do I think Israel should exist? Yes. I don't have any issues about it existing or not existing. I care about what it does in its existence or non-existence. Right-wingers hate Jews and love the state of Israel. I know, it is weird. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. It really is. I think that's because they support the state of Israel. And so whether they hate Jews or not matters less. I mean, it's just like Israel was supporting Nazis in the Ukraine. Think about that shit. Supporting Nazis in the Ukraine. That's astonishing. It's astonishing. I did the story. I was like, oh my God, that's insane. Look, just because you were under an atrocity doesn't necessarily mean you have the ability or cosmic moral reasons to commit another one. African Americans couldn't come out of slavery and then start enslaving all whites after, X number of years. That wouldn't necessarily be cosmically right, even though from the standpoint of human fairness, you can make an argument. But this is different. Palestinians did nothing to Jews. Nothing. And in fact of the matter is, there were some Jews that were living in Palestine beforehand, and they were able to get along perfectly fine until after World War I, where they decided to just take the land. And this is not a religious war. This is not a religious conflict. This is a conflict based on land. It's based on land. And it's based on one side, essentially, meaning a military occupation of the other. I wanted to get into Kashmir because I want the candidates to mention this, especially Tulsi and Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris may be pretending to be black, but you have a heritage, miss, and this is hitting upon it. This is a foreign policy issue. Let's hear him talk about it. All right, guys, I'm dragging ass. So instead of doing the video, I'm dragging ass. It's been 2.5 hours. I'm going to end this here. Like, share. You can always support PayPal, Patreon. And guys, again, I really do appreciate your assistance with the channel. I mean, honestly, I say it pretty much every video now. This channel is brought to you by you. And I appreciate you for allowing me to do it. Oh, by the way, the radio station. So my radio show comes on Tuesdays from 5 to, it's going to be 7. I'm extending it an hour. It's going to be drive time. I was in the studio yesterday We were growing that studio. We're trying to expand the studio, so I was adding lights and stuff to it in order to kind of fix the quality of it. I have an interview coming up with Cal at 6:30 on Sunday, so that should be extremely interesting. Cal from Secular Talk. But the radio studio is going to start looking better and better as we improve that station. We're even going to be moving stuff around and so forth. That was my first show, and I loved it. And so Tuesday will be my second. So it should be good. Have a great evening, JT. Ah, Trudy. What's happening, Trudy? Woohoo, an extra hour. No. No. I'm going to end this here. I'm dragging ass. I had a treatment yesterday, and days after treatments are pains in the ass. It's the pain is in the ass. It's like your fear level is low, so your energy level is low. Nevertheless, hopefully this show went fine. I have to look at it after the fact to make sure it's not insane or off the rails. We are going to cut these videos, so you'll see these videos cut up by subject matter in case you missed any of the subjects or content. The video on Hong Kong is probably going to be sliced in a few times because we ended up back and forth on that topic. Seriously though, Joe Rogan, Dr. Evil, deep fake. I'll check that out. Bernie, deep Joe Rogan, Dr. Evil, deep fake. And it's called a deep fake. Oh right, those are the things where it makes it look like it's the person, but it's really thing. Radio station call letters. Oh, WRWK, Work FM. No, it's not alien subject matter. It's just politics. Actually, I can do whatever I want. The show is talk radio. It's politics. I mean, mostly it's politics or history or philosophy and that type of stuff. But it's effectively this show for radio hour. I can't curse, so there's that. But I couldn't curse on Sputnik either. That's fine. And it's for a radio audience, but I'm showing it on YouTube, so it's going to be for both. It's going to be a blending of both. Hopefully, yes, I can do alien content. I will be doing alien content at times. It just depends on when and what comes up. They are going to be shocked to shit on that. I told my wife, I said, man, do they know what they got into? But it should be good. It should be good. And I've enjoyed it so far. WRWK. More UFO, Maggie Smith. The UFO stuff has to go in line with what comes out. There is something that's bubbling up, but I don't know if it's real yet. So I don't want to do it until it's real. Don't want to do it until it's real. There's what's bubbling up is supposedly materials. One of the things that the Tom DeLonge, his company, who again take with a grain of salt because there are a bunch of spooks that are behind Tom DeLonge. But problem is, spooks are the ones that we know, right? So it's a catch-22. But Tom DeLonge and his company, there was suspicion that they had materials. And not just suspicion, they said that they had materials that supposedly have been recovered from UFO sites. Whether it's real or not, we don't know. But it's supposedly going under analysis, where they're going to hit it with a battery test at real labs, no bullshit labs. I mean, their goal is legitimacy. I mean, part of the reason for Tom DeLonge be giving all of these people is to have an air of legitimacy associated with it. Part of the reason the Pentagon released those tapes and they pretended like they had no idea who released those tapes. They wanted to give it an air of legitimacy. The goal is to get rid of the giggle factor around the UFO issue and to talk about it like a real issue. Part of that is changing the lettering of the names. UFO to UAP. UFO has all sorts of connotations. It's like saying a person is feminist or progressive or Hitler or Zionist. Like, it's a label, but the label has certain emotional and intellectual connotations associated with it that is specific to the individual who's saying the word or thinking about the word, but has general understanding in regards to what people are talking about. Meaning how people feel about it and what they think about it is separate from the just basic bare bones information of what they know it is. Meaning we know it's an unidentified flying object. All right, but stringing from that is also the things depending upon the person associated with that knowledge of it. So if you change it to UAP, same thing, exact same thing, but the difference is nobody knows what a UAP is. And so you can come up with new connotations associated with it, with the air of legitimacy to the UAP. I hope you understand what I mean. It's propaganda of sorts. It's just it's trying to change public opinion on an issue, and they believe that one is tainted, and so they're switching over to another word and allow people to create their own new connotations about it, like it's something new, something different. Same thing. It's the exact same thing. Exact same thing. UFO is becoming pejorative. Yeah. Yeah, that's what it is. Did you ever watch Gorn Get Smart Flavor? I haven't watched Gorn, Trudy, but I did look it up. I went on, I was on Netflix. I did look it up, but I didn't get an opportunity to watch it. Tainted History, same thing. It's rebranding. That's exactly what it is. It's rebranding. So when Hillary Clinton comes out and tells, I think it was Jimmy Kimmel, it's called UAPs now. Why is she doing that? Jimmy Kimmel didn't just ask that question, by the way. In the WikiLeaks documents, you saw that Hillary Clinton's team was pushing Jimmy Kimmel to ask that very question on UFOs. She wanted the question asked. In fact, she had been trying to get reporters and stuff to ask her that question for a period of time. It just happened Jimmy Kimmel was the one to do it. After Jimmy Kimmel asked that question and after she gave that response, they were beaming. She nailed it. It was a great answer. It seemed to have been a concerted effort to get that topic pushed up. And UAP is one of those things of trying to change the connotation associated with it just for branding. So I'm skeptical of DeLong. DeLong has this bad alien theory stuff going on. And the fact that he's being pushed by spooks and pushing out the bad alien theory makes me suspicious. Makes me very suspicious. Tom DeLong knows dick about UFOs other than what somebody told him. Meaning he knows nothing about UFOs. And he hasn't had any experiences and none of that stuff. And so it's not like he's in on it, insofar as some of these spooks give him information, tell him to go out and parrot the information. You have various people who have contacts who in UFO or that type of stuff, those type of fields, either in business, either in government, either in military, and come back with different assessments. The assessments seems to be different depending on who you talk to. I don't know. I like the fact that it's not a pejorative in the sense that the skeptical argument doesn't fully make sense now, seeing as the stuff is starting to hit the airwaves. By the same token, I don't entirely buy what I'm being told. So, aliens are all socialists. Why won't they declassify? Are they? You know, the funny part is, I remember the guy saying, are aliens capitalists? Do aliens believe in Jesus? You have Christians who say shit like that. You have people who say shit like that. Aliens are demons. I know. My wife's husband thinks that. Aliens are demons. They're demons. They're coming to get you. This is what you would have to deal with in a society. There are some of us who are like, don't take that tenor. They're beings, just like they're beings in Texas. I would be stunned and shocked if they weren't. Just like they're beings, in California. There may be beings elsewhere. And just like the people who are in China, who exist but don't exactly look like us, they think, they communicate, they are. I would be stunned if that wasn't the same thing somewhere else. I don't believe that Jesus and God created Earth and spins it like a basketball on his finger and just observes it and looks at it peeringly constantly and keeps it in a glass case. I don't have that Christian belief at all. Skeptics do. Clearly, I don't. I don't have that belief because my thought is life tries to grow anywhere life gets the opportunity to grow. In volcanic pits, they have life. And so, but yeah, that's just here. I don't buy that. I don't buy it at all. There are more planets than grains of sands on the beach on Earth. In fact, more galaxies than grains of sands on every beach on the planet Earth. But just Earth is supposed to be the one supporting of life. Our science is like 100 years old. And the hubris that is a part of the science to say it is impossible for something else to get here. The key word in that's often left off is based on our level of science. It's nonsense to believe that something is just going to be stuck at your level of science. It's even nonsense to believe that how they start off in their scientific development is similar to yours. They may have different minerals, they have different chemicals that they're dealing with. They may look at this in a different way. You have all sorts of things that can exist. This notion that scientists come out with all the hubris in the world, it's impossible for something to get here. The key point in that you need to always understand is based on our level of science. It is a nonsense proposition to believe our 100 years of science is the epitome of science. That's the top of the universe. That's the best that there ever will be. which is nonsense because science always expands and improves. They used to think, speed of sound was the speed limit. Not so much. All sorts of things. You find ways around it, especially as your science grows and develops and your ability to use materials and the different materials that you're able to house and use change and grow, etc., etc. It's a nonsense proposition to believe that nothing could possibly get here and that we, with our crude instruments, will be able to detect those things that are out there if they are indeed there. Just saying, we make certain suppositions, and I think those suppositions are wrong. And I would say that what is taking place from the standpoint of the stuff coming out from Tom DeLonge and all this other stuff, I like the legitimizing of the subject. That I like. Whether or not those are craft from somewhere else, I don't know. I do think we're being visited. That's true. But do I know as a flat fact that the pilots or the things that the pilots are seeing are entirely something else? No, I don't. One of two things are true, though. Either they're not us or they are us. If they're not us, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. But if they are, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Because if what those pilots are identifying are our craft that are just kind of in this black box way, in this kind of, this black budget way, where there are these black budget programs that they've been developing almost in this kind of parallel with our system, but they've gone so like 30, 40 years beyond us. And even though it's only 20, 30 years, it looks like an alien fucking craft because of how technology builds upon itself. And all of the money and all of the resources that gets dumped into these black budget projects, those black budget projects may be paying off in the sense of the type of technology that's being revealed. Our military sees something that might be a black budget craft and says, oh my God, they're fucking aliens. Missing the point that they might not be. You're assuming that our craft don't have those capabilities. You're assuming of the mechanics and the physics of that craft is exactly the same as the mechanics and the physics of the craft that you're using. For all you know, that craft is not even moving from the standpoint of something being pushed out the back. You have no idea how that thing is moving. Meaning you don't have no idea what somebody in the craft may be experiencing. You're assuming what they're experiencing based on what you experienced when you're flying your craft. There's all sorts of shit that they're making assumptions on. They're making assumptions. Look, in either case, this is a massive story. Either way, whether it's us or not. This is a massive story either way. So, Bob Ramirez, once Disney Plus owns, we'll believe what we're told. Once Disney owns it, we'll believe it. We'll believe what we're told. Look, man, be skeptical. Appreciate learning from you, JT. Brent McKinney. Thank you, Brent. Thank you, Brent. All right, I'm going to end it. I know I keep saying that and keep being pulled in. Don't get me on the UFO stuff. I'll be here for an hour. Don't be here for an hour. Che Zus. Yeah, I'm really not with Jamarl in this one. You don't have to be, but what I'm saying is right. You don't have to be, but what I'm saying is perfectly right. Military is seeing something. True or false? Do you believe it or disbelieve it? Just start there. Do you believe all the reports that have come out with this? And if you don't believe it, what are you using to disbelieve that? Like, I find this to be a conspiracy theory. I'm sorry. I find it to be a conspiracy theory. I find it to be a conspiracy theory. Like, it has to be, right? I mean, they're telling you that these guys have been seeing stuff, the military. And the response to people is, I don't believe the military pilots. Why? Because I don't really want to buy this issue. Okay, that's your choice not to buy it. But just be very clear, you're making a choice not to believe something that is flat fact true. And what I mean is, I don't doubt that the pilots are seeing something. The question becomes, what are they seeing? Is it us or not? My point is, either way, it's fucking amazing. Fucking amazing. Che, many of us read CIA UFO docs. They're searchable. Yeah, jumping to conclusions is usually a bad idea. You are literally jumping to conclusions. You are literally jumping to conclusions. And my point is this. The media comes out with a bombshell report. Do you believe the New York Times reporting or not? Yeah or nay? If the answer is no, then nothing else matters. You don't believe what you're being, you don't believe reports on it. if you believe that in New York Times reports and the Washington Post reports and the political reports and the Navy that's changed their protocols, if you don't believe any of these organizations, then I question why. But if you do, then how on earth do you come away with this thinking one way or the other? Like, these people are saying, this is what we're saying. Do you believe it or not? Do you believe it or not? Which one is it? You can say you're jumping to conclusions, but are you jumping to conclusions in your belief or your non-belief? I don't have to believe one way or the other. I've given you potentials. And my point to you is it's one way or the other. It's one or the other. It can't be both. Either all of those pilots are lying. Either the U.S. military are just making this shit up. Either the WikiLeaks docs are just making it up. All of this stuff would have to be wrong for you to be right. If I'm right, then those pilots are not lying. And by the way, saying they're lying is a conspiracy theory, literally. If those pilots aren't lying, then what they're saying is either us or not. How do you contest that? How is that a contest? How is that a contesting? Like, this is some with logic stuff. You're literally jumping to conclusions. I don't know what they saw, but the first answer that is aliens. No. What I said to you is, deal with what I'm saying to you. It's one or the other. It's us or not. It's us or not. It's us or not. It's us or not. Which is it? Which is it? Which is it? Now, if you say that it is us, fair enough. But that means that you're going down a conspiracy theory because you're talking about a parallel program that had to take place. Meaning if those pilots aren't lying and those pilots are indeed seeing something, not one or two, a lot. If they are in fact seeing something, then they're seeing something. And if they're saying that those craft are doing things like go fucking kill a pilot if a pilot was in that craft. It's us or not. It's 1 or 0. Trudy goes with not. It's either humans or aliens. Which is it? Jay Scott. But what the fuck knows humans or aliens? Yes. My point is it's one or the other. But both are phenomenal. Like, one or the other. Like understand what I'm saying. Like, I hope you get the gravity of what I'm saying here. If it's not us, say it's not us. And by the way, it's possible that it is not us. Meaning what those pilots are seeing and everything else could literally be craft that the U.S. is working on that is 20 years ahead of our current craft. It could be. And the 20 years, because of the way technology builds on itself, just looks out there. Looks so much out there that it looks like an alien craft. It could be us flying something that they found wreckage on. Or not. What am I missing? What am I missing? What's the third option? What's the third option? Just saying. Like, you could make this case of, oh, you're jumping to conclusions. About what? I'm giving you what it possibly could be. I'm giving you, you're just uncomfortable with that. You're missing the possible answer of it could be not a craft at all. That's not a possible answer. That's not a possible answer. With what we know, that's not a possible answer. My point is this. They've observed the craft. Like, this is not... One of the most powerful things about the video is not the video. It's not the video. It's the person. It's the people who are in the pilots, who are in those craft, who was looking at it do what it did for minutes on end. Now, you're saying that guy doesn't know what he's doing. Do you realize that pilot who was observing that and came forward talking about, I think it was the Nimitz thing, was the same guy who was flying around the United States after 9/11. That's how much the U.S. military trusted that guy. But in this particular one, you don't trust that guy. You don't trust that guy. I'm just saying. This channel pushes the UFO issue, but it pushes it purely in the sense of what is real, not the bullshit stuff. This is not aliens eating babies. This is not people are being taken from their beds and being, sexually abused. None of that stuff. I've been very specific in what I've covered for that reason of maintaining legitimacy. The issues came on New York Times, Washington Post, Politico, CNN, MSNBC, Young Turks, across the board. That's what I've reported. New York Times comes out with another one saying how how, the stuff proliferates. Again. And this is not recent, by the way. This is stuff that's been coming out for years, for decades. The U.S. military has been studying this stuff. But Luis Elizondo, the guy that was studying it, literally studying it, comes on TV and says, I believe we're being visited. Do you think he's lying? Do you believe he's jumping to conclusions? It was his, quote unquote, scientific determination that we're being visited. I listened to that and I said, I don't know if Luis Elizondo is being right or not. The guy's a spook. But I'm a conspiracy theorist who's saying that he's not. I hope you understand my point. It's one or the other. It's not both. I mean, I guess it could be both, but it's one or the other. This notion that it's not a craft doesn't fill with anything that is being said or reported. That's something that you want it to be. That's different than reality. Just saying. They also have visual confirmation. Yes, they have visual confirmation. Che, I appreciate you for being a subscriber and watching this channel, but you do not know what you're talking about on this one. Don't know what you're talking about. Yes, I look like a younger man when I'm arguing UFOs. I'm arguing this shit all day. Because at this point, it's not a conspiracy theory. The U.S. Navy doesn't change its protocols for conspiracy theories. They don't. I guarantee you they don't. When video comes out where they get visual confirmation, where the pilots are observing it, that's not a bullshit thing. That pilot is observing it, is telling what he saw. You believe it's easy for a pilot to come on and say, yes, I was watching this UFO as it was doing maneuvers. You think that's easy? Washington Post, New York Times, Luis Elizondo. I can go down the list. It's not, it's either us or not. A third option of both, but it's one of those. Just saying. You can be with me or not, but you're going to lose this argument. I just put habaneros in my pickles. Right on, dude. Right on. All right. I'm going to end this. I wasn't going to go into a UFO video, but you guys got me into a UFO video anyway, so fair enough. But where has near-death experience, accident, I survived? I've never had a near-death. I've never had near-death, but I've had a situation of where doctors are like, the guy's not going to live. OBE stuff is very, very similar, but the difference in being the connection of the body being severed. It's like a rush of energy, like the person's sometimes when people are in OBEs, they see a cord. The cord is like a connection to the body in a sense. That's what they see, that's what they observe. Whether that's in fact what's taking place or not, who the fuck knows? It's postulated that the cord itself is just there as a mental connection between a person because people get freaked out about dying while they're out of body. In which case they need this kind of mental tether. And whatever you think in that flexible area of reality, those things tend to come into creation, whether you're consciously aware of the fact that you're thinking about the shit or not. The death process severs the cord, at least the conceptual thing of it, and pushes a rush of energy into the point where the person severs the bond or the connection. But the interesting thing here, in OBEs, you always come back to your body. It doesn't matter what, like whether you get scared, freaked out, you crash back into your body. It's like, oh, I'm freaked out. Fuck happened? You get one of those type of things. But for the death process, there's no crashing back. It just is what it is. All the energy goes out. What I experienced was this rush of energy just for the OBE stuff. And from my experience, people who've gone through the OBE process, who have had near-death experiences, who do the OBE stuff, kind of makes this point of saying the connection, or the breaking up the bond of sorts. Like, I guess my point is, in the near-death process, you always crash back into your body regardless what death process. There's no crashing back in. Whether those processes are exactly similar, who the fuck knows? People who do both, or who's done OBEs and has gotten into the near-death stuff, like meaning have had a near-death experience, talks about a similarity but a difference. So it's hard to know. Some of the near-death research is fascinating and consistent, by the way, regardless of religious beliefs, religious leanings, Muslim, black, gay, straight, etc., etc. It tends to be very similar across the board. So the near-death stuff is fascinating. In fact, the kids who there's a professor. Well, he used to be a professor. He used to be head of psychology in UVA. He used to do research into kids who remember past lives, not through past life regression, not through that, but just remembered it. Like, it's like 6 years old, 5 years old. Sometimes you'll meet kids who have memories of stuff that never happened to those kids. And parents just say, oh, those kids are lying. Sometimes those kids are not lying. Sometimes those kids have memories that can be traced back to stuff that actually happened. What's his name? Started doing research on those. And he had like thousands of kids who had memories of stuff that happened before they got here. And he was able to go back and trace those things. The same thing happens with, I want to say the llama, but I don't have full memory on that one. Life's a ride, like an amusement park. Maybe. NDE people are the best hypnosis. They don't have... Well, they tend to be different after it. Like, their perspective tends to be different. Even people with UFO stuff, like, their perspective tends to change, like, drastically about the world, about the environment, about themselves. Like, all sorts of stuff happens when those people have those experiences. It's like this notion of life, the immateriality of it gets that's not the word I'm looking for. The impermanence of it, and even there's an unreal quality to it afterwards, if that makes sense. Like, because think about it for a moment. The moment that you have a OBE, and in that OBE, you find yourself engaging with other beings who you're not controlling, and you're talking to them, they're talking to you. You guys are doing things. You find yourself on a plane of existence. You can lift. You're there. And then you find yourself back here, and your first thought is, okay, which one's real? Like, and if it was a situation where you were having that OBE night after night after night after night after night after night after night, and a portion of your life is spent in this kind of out there thing, how do you know which one is real when you're experiencing reality, a continuation of reality? And both. Like, your OBE thing or near-death experience thing creates a quirk in reality. If this is all you experience, if from your standpoint, this is all that's real. The moment that you start experiencing other things, you start having those questions about which one is real. Fact of the matter is, if you have one, then the question doesn't really come into play because you're always back here and this is the thing that you continuously experience. But for people who are heavy, like OBEers, or people who do like, who've had like near-death experiences, the perspective is different. Their perspective is different. Do you have OBEs these days? No, I don't. Not recently. Not recently. When I was younger, I used to push, like, but that was one of those things of, I used to have, like, lucid dream states, but I couldn't control them. It would just be kind of random. It would be like, I couldn't control it. In fact, the lucid dream stuff never used to happen to me. It only happened to me after I met my guide for the first time. When I met my guide, all that stuff, the weird stuff started happening. Like the lucid dream states, the ending up in other places. Like, it's just bizarre stuff, weird stuff. Even like the flipping on and off of the light space, meaning it wasn't purely in an altered conscious thing. It was also in physical matter of reality. Like, it wasn't just weirdness there. It was also weirdness here. Strange stuff, man. I even meeting people who engaged in that strange stuff. I remember I used to go to this thing where people used to get together and talk about weird stuff, just woo-woo stuff. And the woman who I went to, she did kind of a past life regression for me. I suck at being in those states, so nothing really happened there. But the people who I met were talking about the various stories. Some people were into aliens, so they were telling their stories about that. One woman was a ghost hunter. And as a ghost hunter, she would videotape the stuff that she's doing because people wouldn't believe this weird shit that she was experiencing. And she would have videotape of stuff where would be, let's say it would be just nothing out there. It would be like a flashlight. It would just be a flashlight sitting on a table. And she would have the camera on it. And she would just, nobody's touching it, nobody's near it, she's not fucking around. Like, her goal in this is not to make money, her goal in this is not to wow people. This is what she does, just kind of on the side where she goes goes hunting in mansions and all this other stuff. And she's like, if there's something here, come on. And then would do the thing. But after a while, she would be talking and be like, blink one for yes. and it started blinking. And the questions that you would ask would get blinks corresponding to the light. Now we're sitting here like, okay, this woman doesn't have anything to, and they know this woman and she's not fucking around. This is what she does. But I gotta be honest, I had the same experience. So I can't necessarily say a woman is lying. Like you're I know people who, my wife went with me to Monroe Institute once. The Monroe Institute is the place here. Bob Monroe is the guy who used to have all these OBEs. And he started doing research into OBEs. And he pulled in physicist Tom Campbell. Tom Campbell used to work for NASA, and there was another physicist that he pulled in. Because his thing was, I don't understand this. I want to know, is this real? Is this bullshit? Is it just my head? What's going on? My doctors told me to go to India. I can't go to India. I do have a radio station. I do have money, and so I can use that money to pay researchers to research this. And so he would teach Tom Campbell and the other guy how to do it. Tom Campbell went to it easily. Tom Campbell was made for that shit. The other guys, the same. And they would have these pods where they would get into, and they would get into these obese states, and their job was just research. They would research everything. If people say a pyramid worked, they would sit on the pyramid. If people said this worked, they would do that. They were trying, hitting at everything that people say without any giggle factor or anything. Let's just fuck around and try it. What they found was the ear thing, like brainwaves. So what their research showed was that regular people can get into these kind of forced mental states using there's a term for it, but it's binaural beats. So they would come up with this thing where they have sound in one ear that's a tone off in the other ear, and by playing in both, your brain is trying to resolve, and so your brain comes up with kind of a third frequency. That third frequency can be delta, alpha, and those type of things that helps you get into various states. They also came up with this other product that's similar to it, that's supposedly helping get into those meditative states. My wife gets into one of the pods. I am praying that she has an experience. Because it's one thing for me to tell her about the shit that used to happen to me. He said to me all the time. She has to either believe me or not. It's another thing if it happens to her, in which case she has a stone to say, okay, I can see where that comes from. I don't think the woman is bullshitting about the light, because I've seen it myself. So, Monroe Institute, yeah. Brainwave, yeah. They because look, you are. So, do you feel a presence with lucid dreaming? Not all of them, no. Only in one. There's only one. And it's not really feel per se. It's not really feel. It's not a feeling of presence. It's seeing and talking to. It's All right. So the first lucid dream state that I had was immediately after meeting my guide for the first time, and that one there was a presence. So I had been, for me, my rule is try it. It could be bullshit. Try it, and I want to know whether it's true, even if it's just to me, if that makes sense. Because even if it's just true to you, it's getting at something. Something's there. I don't know what it is, but something's there. I was trying when I was like, am I 17, 18? I came across this notion of spirit guides, and I was like, there's no fucking way this is real. Like, I feel like this has to be bullshit. But I can't say that. I mean, and I think at the time, Sylvia Brown was out there. She was pumping Montel Williams. And she was pushing out these books. And she even had a book say, this is how you do it. How could I pass this up? I think it's bullshit, fair enough. But if she's saying this is how you do it, fair enough. So I tried. And the first thing I noticed is I'm terrified. I am terrified. I like, and what I mean by it is like it would get like I would feel like I was being plugged into an outlet. That was the feeling. It was feeling like I was plugged into an electrical outlet, like I was like this charge was coming all over you, and I would stop it over and over and over again. It went on for months where I would just stop. I was like, right, fuck this, I'm not doing this. And it was one morning where I just let it happen, and in that morning, yes, there was something in the room, and it felt like something was in the room, and I say hello because it feels like something is in the room, and I hear a woman's voice beside the bed say hello back. That didn't freak me out, and honestly, not freak me out. I was flooded with questions. I was like, well, what's this? What's that? What's your name? Where are you from? Et cetera, like just all these questions. In which case, the state was broken immediately. Very next night, however, was my first lucid dream, and that very first night, the very next night, she introduced herself. My name is. Can't remember the name. She says, I'm your expositor. And she proceeds to have a conversation with me. Fuck's sake, I can't remember the conversation. Now, the thing is, the reason why I remember she said my name is so-and-so to me expositor is because at the state I kept saying, remember this, remember this, remember this. When you wake up, remember this word, because you have no idea what that fuck that word means. I have never heard the word expositor. And I kept telling myself over and over again, remember the word. Now, the reason I kept repeating that word to myself while I was in that state was because I didn't want to lose it. She said my name is so-and-so, and I thought that word was more important than her name, and I thought I would remember her name more so than the word, so I kept trying to emphasize on the word. Couldn't remember her name. Fucking couldn't remember her name. There was another one in another lucid state. Her name was Kinzia. In that case, I did remember the name because I kept repeating, remember the name, remember the name, remember the name. No, my lucid dream state started happening after the first encounter. That's the reality of it. That's the reality of it. But after that, they started happening over and over and over and over and over again. It started to edge off as I got older. Like when I hit 30, 31, or 32, they started to edge off. But at that point, I started to get more involved in this notion of, okay, OBEs. How can I have OB? How can I control it? It's one thing to have a lucid dream where you don't control it. It's another thing to have one where you can control the experience. That's kind of how that stuff kind of escalated. All right, I'm going to end this here because we're just talking about nonsense. Schizophrenia can make people see aliens. Kim's. David Alberts. Yeah, the problem is that we're not talking about people seeing aliens. All right. JT is my expositor, Robert Pouquet. That's funny. You know, I never heard that word. I literally never heard that word. That word means, I'll pull it up. Expositor. A person or thing that translates and explains complicated ideas or theories. This happened when I was 19 fucking years old. This was like 19 years old. And this woman, older white woman, at least the way she looks, and keep in mind, the looks aren't real. None of this stuff is real. The idea of a name is nonsense. People in the spiritual community are like, my guide named Bob. Is your guide really named Bob? And someone's like, my guide helps me park my car. Really? Your guide helps you park your car? You'd be surprised at some of the shit they say. None of that stuff is real. At least in real terms, in the way that you think of real. When you see a school or a library, that school or library is a place that your brain is translating of just holding information. It's not a library in the traditional sense of holding books. It is something that holds information. Your brain is the conduit. When she is talking to you, she's not using air to breathe in order to talk to you. Your brain is making the conduit between those two things, and what you know of people communicating is talking, so it seems like she's talking to you. Like all sorts of those things come into play that people tend to take for granted. I was 19 years old. So I'm an expositor. I don't know why I would need an expositor at 19. Damn sure need one now for this job. But a lucid expositor of difficult ideas. That's what it means. I looked that shit up immediately when I got up that day. I was like, and in fact, I think the first person I called was my mom. I was like, you never believe this. You never believe this. And I said, this is what this means. This is what this means. It's what it is. All right. We got that extra hour I made a woo about. Yeah, you did. You did. You did. Pull me into woo-woo shit. Fair enough. Fair enough. Oh, I don't care if they download. As long as they view it, that's all that matters. That's all that matters. And by the way, the I don't get put on last for downloads. It was something else. I forgot. I can't remember what it was. All right, guys. I will end this here. Like, share, subscribe. You guys are awesome. And again, this content is brought to you by you guys, and I appreciate you for doing so. Bernie a guillotine. Would you do a deprivation tank? I've done a deprivation tank. Do you feel a presence in lucid dream? Oh, read that one. No, I don't feel a presence. There are times where I'm talking to someone. Like my guide, the first time she made her appearance, her and I had a conversation. Her and I talked. I don't entirely remember that conversation. But I remember the events that happened in that state. Meaning, I remember, like when she had the conversation with me, one of the things she said is, "You're evolving." That's the one thing I remember. And at the time, I was having issues with weight, and I was freaked out about my weight, and I was about to fall out of the state, the lucid state, because when you at least for me, the way I experience a lucid dream is when I'm pulling out of the state, especially when I have a physical body, I started to die in that state. Like you start to lose your ability to talk, to see, and that type of stuff. Your senses kind of go along with it. But in my experience, and the other experience I had with her, it was experiences us talking. It looked like she portaled into the dream state, like she came out of the ground or something. But again, none of it is real. All of it is a dream state. All of it is, it's just your perception of events. But those perceptions of events are solid. They're if you look at it too hard, it'll look hazy. But from my perspective, it looked like she kind of burrowed through the ground. And we were talking, and I asked her about my dad, actually. I know this sounds weird. When you're in lucid states, and this gets, God, man, we're way in black box territory. Maybe I just cut this for black box. When you're in OB states and lucid dream states, reality is malleable, at least a bit more malleable. And you have the tendency or the ability to call for things. Now, whether those things you call for are real and what we consider to be real or not, meaning something separate and distinct from yourself, is hard to know. At least sometimes it's hard to know. In her case, I think she's something separate and distinct. Tom Campbell would say she is separate and distinct, but she's part of a larger consciousness system that gives you something for you to interact with, meaning technically she's not real, she's a robot. Who knows? I perceive her as being a real thing in a person. That said, I asked her about my dad. I'm like, because I wasn't calling for her. What I did was, in that dream state, or in that lucid state, I was lucid. I had a body back somewhere else. I was walking. I was like, all right, let's see what we can do with this. And I called for my one of my guides once before. She came, in which case that worked. So I was wondering whether or not I could call for people. Can I call for my dad? He's dead. Can I call for him? I call for him, and she appears. My guide appears, and she says, your dad is predisposed. And I said, what do you mean predisposed? He's dead. What are you talking about? He's predisposed. Predisposed doing what? Like, that was the weirdest answer. And the wild part about this is, my dad and I didn't get along when he was here. Not so much that disliked him, but we had he wasn't around, and I didn't like. It wasn't around. We didn't get along. Let's say it that way. After he passed, there was these extremely difficult dream states. I took it as me working through shit after he passed. There were 3 of them. All appeared with him, and all of those were difficult to go through. When I was until the last one was easier. This particular one, I was calling him. I was like, well, I wonder if I can call for him. The first time, God, man, even that's a weird one. I saw my dad once when this is kind of, again, these kind of weird dream states. I ended up in a situation, and everything was bright, extremely bright, brighter than what we would typically see as bright. And the lights and the colors and everything were fuck, that's not a good example. I was gonna say, if you've ever been to the harbor, like either in Portugal, when you're crossing the bridge going into Portugal, or if you are in Iliad, Israel, of all places, you're standing on kind of like the border of the beach or something to that effect. Kind of like that, where it's pitch bright outside, like real bright, 90-degree day, really, really bright. As bright as you can tolerate from the standpoint of how bright things are, meaning the sun. With the colors being a tick off normal, it wasn't necessarily entirely normal from the standpoint of colors. And I am in slight panic. I don't know why, but I see him, and he's shocked as shit to see me. And I'm trying to get to him, and I am being yanked back. And the yanking back is getting more and more intense, regardless of how hard I push. And I don't remember why. I remember being under a certain degree of panic. Fuck, this happened so long ago, where I was trying to get to him and I couldn't get to him. And I just remember, his expression was like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" But after that, the intense dreams started. But I thought, well, whenever I can call him, how much can you use, this for? And he didn't show up. She showed up, and she was like, "Yeah, he's predisposed." I said, "Predisposed For what? He's dead. And at that point, she was walking away. Like that bit of humor didn't necessarily land. But she started to leave. And at this point, I still was in this camp of wanting to know what her name was. And I said, what's your name? What's your name? And she says, you know who I am? And she's gone. It's weird. It's woo-woo stuff, man. It's woo-woo stuff. It is woo-woo stuff. Ask a question about Star Trek, give you another 30 minutes. I know, which is why I'm leaving the shit now. I have tried the deprivation tank. So we have those in Richmond. They have these water tanks. They're like I can't think of the name of it, but it's a new place that's opened up in Richmond. I got my wife a massage or something like that. While she was getting a massage, I tried sensory deprivation. I don't do meditation well, especially as I got older. My mind is all over the place. And so in that, for, let's say, I think it was in for 30 minutes, and for 29 of those minutes, I am awake and just kind of sitting there. Just awake and sitting there like, oh God. And then I feel self-conscious because I'm naked. There's like all this other stuff that's coming into play. For that last 30 seconds, it felt like something was in the room. Freaked me the fuck out. Freaked me out. In fact, it was one of those things like, fuck. Fuck. But that's your brain fucking with you. I mean, you're sensory deprivation. Your brain is fucking with you. Yeah, your brain is screwing with you. Have you seen Orville? I have seen Orville. I like Orville. It's Star Trek's younger brother or something. It's like, but it's comedy. But I don't like Star Trek being comedy. I don't want Star Trek being comedy. I want Star Trek to be Star Trek. Hopefully we get that with Picard's new show. Yeah, hopefully we get that with the Picard new show. Yeah, go. All right, I'm going to end this. I've been trying to end this for 30 minutes. Like, share, PayPal, Patreon. And all of you, really, guys, I do appreciate your support for this channel. Thank you. It goes without saying. Like and share. Thanks all.